celebration of this year's Women's Month, the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines would like to honor its female scientists.
Welcome to the Philippine Science Heritage Center's new Salinlahi Science Center, honoring our top Filipino scientists and their game-changing contributions to the world of science. Know more about all of them and let the Salinlahi Science Center be your gateway into their minds. Salinlahi.
Good morning, magandang araw, maayong buntag sa imong tanan. To our online audience, Board of Judges, colleagues at the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines, friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is a great pleasure to connect with you through Zoom and Facebook Live online platforms. Today, we will witness the virtual paper presentation for the NAST Talent Search for Young Scientists, where 5 finalists will present their entry papers to vie for the award. I am Jomar F. Rabahante, Dean of the UP Los Baños Graduate School and 2016 NAST Talent Search for Young Scientist awardee. And I will be your Master of Ceremony and moderator for today. To those who are watching, let your friends know that you are attending this activity. Please use the official hashtags 2021 NTSYS and Philippinast. A few reminders for this activity. Please key in your questions in the Q&A box or feature in Zoom. For those who are streaming in the NAST Philippines Facebook Live, kindly key in your questions in the comments section. The finalists will answer your questions during the open forum. To receive an e-certificate for attending this activity, participants are requested to fill out an evaluation form after the program. The link to the evaluation form will be flashed later. Now, let us hear the welcome message from the NAST President, Academician Rodora V. Asanza. The screen is now yours, Academician Asanza.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rabahante. Do you hear me well? Okay, a pleasant day to everyone. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. On behalf of the National Academy of Science and Technology, I am delighted to welcome you all to this year's NAST Talent Search for Young Scientists virtual paper presentation. As the country's highest recognition body in science and technology, the Academy is proud and pleased to administer today's virtual paper presentation as part of the exercise for the NAST Talent Search for Young Scientists. This award aims to encourage our young and talented researchers to contribute more to the advancement of the sciences in the country. Investment in research and development, or R&D, is essential as we explore opportunities for improvement towards nation building. The Academy believes that recognizing young scientists could encourage them to excel in research and help sustain the promotion of science culture, including the advancement of S&T in the country. We need more young researchers. We need more young scientists because the future belongs to the youth. Furthermore, I hope that through this event, we highlight the significance of active curiosity, a value any scientist and researcher should have to continuously go beyond the limit of imagination and her capabilities to generate quality research that will contribute new knowledge. This curiosity also helps our young scientists and researchers to love the joys and challenges of research. I would like to thank all those who worked persistently to make this virtual presentation successful. Our Board of Judges, headed by National Scientist Raul V. Fabella, our finalists for participating and contributing to our country's science and development agenda. May you inspire many of our talented young experts to explore opportunities for improvement towards nation building anchored in science. I challenge you further to conduct aggressive S&T related researches that could bring forth innovation and sustainability. To our online viewers for finding time in your schedule to watch this activity, I encourage you all to witness our finalists as they discuss their research and their importance to science and their potentials for development of the country. Also, allow me to express my sincerest thanks to our partners, the Department of Science and Technology, for the continued support to our endeavors, the academe, the scientific community, and of course our friends in the media who never fail to give support for our advocacies. Good day to all of us. Mabuhay. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Academician Asanza. At this point, let us welcome on our screens National Scientist Raul V. Fabella, Chair of the Social Sciences Division of NAST and Chair of the Board of Judges, to give his message. He will likewise introduce the members of the Board of Judges and give the criteria for judging.
Good morning, everyone. Congratulations to the chosen 5. All of you, presenters of today, are winners. Whether you land the number 1 spot or the number 5, the fact is you will each carry the distinction of being winners of the NAST Young Talent Search Award. This exercise this morning is being done just to determine the ranking. We in the Academy are always looking for our replacements. Not all of the Academy membership can boast of the distinction you will carry from now on. I certainly cannot. This award is both a pat in the back for work already done, excellent work already done. But more importantly, it is a wager by your seniors that you will soar to even greater heights. I say, aim for the stratosphere so that someday you may join that eminent scientist Johannes Kepler, who after years of mental struggle, he finally completed the 3 laws of planetary motion, the first of which, as you know, is the ellipse. And he said, and I quote, "I exploded in divine rage. I have stolen the sacred vessels of Egypt to build a proper home for my God." That sentiment should be our goal. You already know the different criteria for your selection. You're being here with us. The basis for the ranking, however, will be 50% from the interview. Questions are asked during the open forum, and 50% for the quality of the research paper and the quality of the presentation. Plaques and cash prizes will be awarded. The first prize winner will receive 100,000 pesos. The second prize, 50,000. The third prize, 30,000. And the special citations will receive 10,000. The first prize winner is entitled to a research grant worth 500,000 pesos from the DOST for an approved research proposal. I would like now to acknowledge the members of the board and the panel of judges. First, we have Academician Gisela P. Concepcion. Gisela Concepcion is recognized for her accomplishments in the field of marine science, biochemistry, biomedical sciences. She leads various research groups in search of novel marine compounds with anti-cancer, antibacterial, anti-tuberculosis, anti-malarial, anti-inflammatory properties. She is a faculty of the Marine Science Institute, University of the Philippines, Diliman. Academician Jose Maria P. Balmaceda is a mathematician with important contributions to group theory, representation theory, and algebraic combinatorics. He has helped the scientific education and training of young students through mentorship of mathematics in the undergraduate and graduate levels. He's a faculty of the Institute of Mathematics, the University of the Philippines. Academician William T. Torres is a specialist in communications technology and is an active participant in various government and non-government educational programs concerning the applications of information technology. At present, Academician Torres is also actively involved in numerous organizations in different capacities in the ASEAN and locally. He is, of course, a member of a senior faculty professor of the Mapua University. Academician Carmencita D. Padilla started the genetic technology to the Philippines through the development of a clinical genetic service for the Philippine General Hospital. She is responsible for the Newborn Screening Act of 2004, integrating newborn screening in the healthcare delivery system, and the Rare Diseases Act. She is currently Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Manila. Academician Ruben L. Villarreal, former Chancellor of UP Los Baños, made special contributions in plant science and has contributed to the varietal improvements of tomatoes, sweet potatoes, cabbage, cauliflower, watermelon, etc., and to the development of the vegetable industry in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. We hope that our young scientists and researchers continue to be inspired to bear down deeper in their chosen fields and will eventually help uplift the conditions of the Filipinos. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your message, National Scientist Fabella. Before we proceed to the paper presentation proper, we would like to announce that the call for nominations for the 2021 DOST Awards is still open. The deadline for the submission of entries is on the last working day of March 2021. Please check the NAST Philippines website for more information. For the NAST Awards, like the next NAST Talent Search for Young Scientists, the deadline of submission is on the last working day of November every year. NAST is very strict with the deadline, so be sure to be punctual. Again, I am reminding everyone that we will have a designated time for the open forum right after the presentations of our finalists. Kindly type your questions in the Q&A box for our participants here in Zoom and in the comment section for those watching via Facebook Live. Okay, I believe everyone is now ready for the paper presentation. To our 5 finalists, we would like to remind you that you are given 15 minutes to deliver your presentation. Our secretariat will prompt you of the time. The order of presentation is randomized, so without further ado, our first paper presenter is Dr. Nonowin L Agustin. She obtained her MS and doctoral degrees in agricultural sciences, major in bioengineering sciences at Nagoya University, Japan in 2020. Her field of interest include genetics, breeding, and epigenetics of fruit system formation for genetic improvement of rice adapted to water stress conditions. Let's give virtual applause to Dr. Nonowin L Agustin as she presents her paper WEG1, which encodes a cell wall Hydroxyproline-rich glycoprotein is essential for parental root elongation, controlling lateral root formation in rice.
I think I cannot share screen. I cannot share screen. Okay na po ba yung screen po at saka yung audio po?
Yes?
Okay.
Yes po.
Okay, good morning everyone. We already experienced waves of this COVID-19 pandemic, and today I will show another kind of wave, but beneficial in times of stress situations. Our study is about the wavy root elongation growth 1, or WEG1, which encodes a cell wall hydroxyproline-rich glycoprotein, is essential for parental root elongation, controlling lateral root formation in rice. Our rain-fed rice ecosystem occupies a significant production area covering 30% of the total area devoted to rice, which is equivalent to 1.5 million hectares. However, rain-fed areas suffer from drought stress, as shown in this map, which significantly reduces yield. This is the reason why rain-fed rice areas have lower productivity than the favorable environment, which is irrigated ecosystem. But I would like to add that even irrigated ecosystems are now threatened by water scarcity or drought due to changing rainfall patterns and increasing atmospheric temperatures that have reduced water level of dams, which is important for the irrigation of rice fields. Also, water-saving technologies such as alternate wetting and drying, or AWD, are exposed to mild drought as soil moisture fluctuates from flooded to dry due to intermittent irrigation cycles. So considering the rain-fed conditions, a possible solution for rice to adapt is roots, which is recently suggested as a key to a second revolution, and so plant breeders are turning their attention to roots in improving productivity of crops. We particularly focus on the production of highly developed branch root system or root plastic development as an adaptive trait of rice for drought stress. This is important for the expansion of the root system for water and nutrient uptake in the soil profile and contributes significantly to the maintenance of shoot dry matter production and, most importantly, yield. The rice root system has several components: the seminal root that comes out first from the plant, the crown roots which are produced from the stem, and the lateral roots that emerge from both the seminal roots and crown roots, which are referred as parental roots. But take note, there are two types of lateral roots. The S-type lateral root, S for short because they stop their growth as soon as they emerge from the parental root, and they are thin in diameter. And the L-type lateral root, L for long, because they are capable of higher order of branching and they have thick diameter. Thus, in order to improve rice root system into much more highly branched root system to access more water and nutrients from the soil, L-type lateral roots should be increased. Then what is needed for rain-fed rice ecosystems? We have to breed high-yielding rice with improved plastic roots via promoted L-type lateral roots. But in order to fast-track breeding, selection of lines, and genetic improvement, we have to identify the genes associated with promoted L-type lateral root formation. There are studies about the genetics of root system formation through the availability of mutants and the isolation of their respective causative genes. However, most of these mutants have defects on any of the root components, so they cannot be used for breeding purposes. And rice mutants with promoted L-type lateral roots are scarcely reported, so the genetic determinant of L-type lateral root is largely unknown. Fortunately, our group was able to isolate this mutant or variant with wavy parental roots as compared to its wild type Titrum 65. Wild type refers to the original variety and is not subjected to mutation. And from these wavy parental roots, a high number of L-type lateral roots are produced, while the wild type has straight parental roots and produce S-type lateral roots. And because this mutant showed wavy root phenotype, we named it as wavy root elongation growth 1 or WEG1. With this mutant, we aim to identify the genetic determinant regulating L-type lateral root formation and its function, and also identify the mechanism controlling L-type lateral root formation. For methodology, we grew the materials in nutrient solution at seedling stage and measured different phenotypes. We also measured cell division and length by EDU staining and salicylic acid treatments, respectively. Then the cells were viewed using a laser scanning microscope. To isolate the causative gene, we performed map-based cloning by linkage analysis and sequencing. Then afterwards, we performed expression analysis by qRT-PCR. Then we did complementation tests where we introduced the gene to the mutant and see if the root phenotype was rescued, then check protein localization. And finally, we also perform exogenous application of auxin to the wild type. In our results, firstly, we found that the height, seminal root length, and crown root number of WEG1 and wild type were comparable, but the distinct difference was on the wavy root phenotype and lateral root formation. WEG1 mutant had lower number of total lateral roots and S-type lateral roots, but interestingly, higher number of L-type lateral roots, which formed specifically at the outer side of the bent region of the wavy parental root. Then we tried to understand the reason behind the wavy parental root at cellular level. In the bent region, there could be a differential growth in the opposite sides that is due to the difference in the number or size of cells. We then checked the cell division at the root tip by EDU staining. The upper photos show the wild-type root tips, while the lower photos show the mutant root tips. Based on our observations, the cell division rate in the root tip of wild-type and WEG1 is the same as indicated by this green color. Therefore, the wavy root phenotype of WEG1 is not caused by cell division. Next, we check the cell elongation at the root elongation zone, and we focus on the cortical cell layers. In the wild type, we observe clearly that the cortical cell lengths of wild type were the same at both sides, resulting to straight parental root. On the other hand, the cortical cells of WEG1 at the outer side of the bent region were longer than the inner side at the elongation zone. These results suggest that the WEG1 wavy root phenotype is caused by asymmetric cell elongation but not cell division. Then we isolated the causative gene of WEG1 on chromosome 9 by map-based cloning, and the causative gene was located between these two specific markers, wherein a single base substitution difference was revealed. This mutation is actually at the fourth intron or non-coding region. And because this mutation site is important for splicing, we need to check if this was not disturbed by the mutation. So we then performed RT-PCR and found that the fourth intron was not deleted and the WEG1 amino acid sequence was changed, resulting to the generation of a stop codon. In short, there was a change in the protein, and so the phenotype that we observed. And this gene is annotated as a member of the hydroxyproline-rich glycoprotein or HRGP superfamily of cell wall proteins. There is no report on this gene on the regulation of elongation, but some of the members of HRGP were reported to control cell elongation. So we performed quantitative real-time PCR of root samples from different zones of the seminal root and revealed that WEG1 gene is highly expressed at the elongation zone, and this coincided to the expression pattern of WEG1 using gas reporter. The WEG1 expression pattern is localized at the elongation zone and expressed at the cortical cells. So this means that HRGP is important in the normal regulation of cell elongation. These are our results, and I would like to do a recap at this point. The WEG1 mutant showed wavy root phenotype, and the causative gene is a member of the HRGP known as cell wall proteins. It is expressed at the elongation zone at the cortical cells. So this mutation disrupted the elongation zone, wherein the cortical cell lengths were longer at the outer side than the inner side. That's why we could observe this wavy root phenotype of WEG1 mutant. As I have shown earlier, the L-type lateral roots of WEG1 mutant were produced from the outer side of the bent regions. Thus, the first event is the bending of the parental root, and the second is the formation of L-type lateral roots. So in our next experiment, we tried to elucidate how L-type lateral roots form from the bent region. Since WEG1 has a natural wavy root phenotype, we mimic the bent region of WEG1 root to the wild type by rotation from vertical to horizontal at 90 degrees and induce gravity stimulation. We showed that the wild type produced L-type lateral roots, which were induced at the outer side of the bent region. Then we further observe that the outer side of the bent region of both wild type rotated and WEG1 mutant root accumulated high auxin as shown by these green dots. So we speculated that high amount of auxin is required to induce L-type lateral roots. So to confirm this, we treated IAA to the wild type grown vertically and revealed that L-type lateral root density was indeed induced at high concentration of auxin. Therefore, the L-type lateral roots produced from the wavy parental root are induced via auxin accumulation at the outer side of the bent region. In this study, we generated this model for auxin-dependent lateral root formation from wavy parental root. The wild type grown vertically showed symmetric auxin distribution at the root tip and had straight parental roots and produced S-type lateral roots. On the other hand, the wild type rotated showed asymmetric auxin distribution at the root tip, which later on showed symmetric auxin distribution at the root tip and auxin accumulated at the outer side of the bent region where L-type lateral roots are produced. In the mutant root tip region, auxin distribution is symmetric as opposed to the wild type rotated. This suggests that the wavy root phenotype is independent of auxin. However, the accumulation of high auxin levels at the outer side of the curvatures induce the formation of L-type lateral roots, similar to the gravity-stimulated wild type. So in conclusion, we identified the genetic determinant regulating L-type lateral roots for the first time. The WEG1 controls symmetric cell elongation, resulting to straight parental root and production of S-type lateral roots, while the mutation gene directly regulates asymmetric cell elongation, causing wavy parental root growth, and indirectly regulates L-type lateral root formation by auxin accumulation at the outer side of the bent region. And we are happy to know that this study has been cited in the RISE Annotation Project database. And to the best of our knowledge, this mutant that we analyzed is first described so far, and so this mutant could be useful for breeding. And what we're doing now is to utilize the WEG1 mutation gene We evaluate the performance of the WEG1 mutation gene in brain-fed ecosystems under Philippine condition. And we are also currently developing breeding lines with the WEG1 mutation gene and combine it to widely cultivated, high-yielding Philippine rice varieties. We hope that with this genetic improvement using the WEG1 mutation gene to improve L-type lateral root formation, rice plant can increase water and nutrient uptake under drought stress that consequently increase stomatal conductance and photosynthesis, thereby resulting to increase in shoot dry matter and yield, which is expected to be around 20 to 30%. With that, we would like to thank the following and funding agencies.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Agustin. Now, let's move on to the next presenter. Our next presenter is Dr. Rainier G Mendoza, an assistant professor of the Institute of Mathematics, University of the Philippines, Diliman. He finished his PhD degree from the Karl Franz University of Graz, Austria. He works on numerical optimization, mathematical modeling, and partial differential equations. Let's welcome on our screens Dr. Rainier G Mendoza as he presents his paper, A Two-Phase Segmentation Approach to the Impedance Tomography Problem.
Let me share my screen. Okay na po ba?
Yes, Rainier.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I am Rainier Mendoza from iMath, UP Diliman, and I'll be giving my presentation on a two-phase segmentation approach to the impedance tomography problem. Okay. So I will begin my presentation by talking about electrical impedance tomography, or EIT. So what is EIT? So an EIT system consists of an electrode, as you can see here, the white ones, and then currents are inserted at these electrodes. Okay. Then boundary voltages are measured. So based on the boundary voltages, the conductivity distribution sigma here on the screen, as you can see, is reconstructed. So actually, EIT is similar to CT scan, except in EIT, currents are used instead of X-ray. As you can see, the EIT system is significantly cheaper. It is portable and does not use radiation. If you see here in the image, the resolution is not as good as in CT. This is why EIT is a growing research field in applied mathematics. So in this work, we propose an approach in reconstructing images in electrical impedance tomography. Now, imagine current passes from the electrode to the body and then exits another electrode. Okay? Then, the voltages are measured. So based on the boundary voltages, the conductivity distribution of the body is reconstructed. The conductivity of healthy tissues show great contrast. That is why EIT has gained popularity in medical imaging. In our work, we assume that the conductivity sigma can be represented by two phases. So the first phase being the inclusion. So here, that is omega sub 1 and omega sub 2. And then the second phase is the background. Yeah. So the conductivity sigma and the electric potential phi satisfy the following partial differential equation. So this is a generalized Ohm's law, okay, a partial differential equation, and the current F satisfies this because of the conservation of charge. The EIT problem has two sub-problems. So the first one is the forward problem. So in the forward problem, you are given the image, so you're given the conductivity distribution already of the whole body, and the goal is to determine the electric potential in the whole body. So this is actually very easy because you can use any standard numerical partial differential equation algorithms to do this. The second sub-problem, which is the imaging problem, is called the inverse problem. So in the inverse problem, you wish to recover the conductivity distribution sigma given only partial data of the electric potential at the electrodes. So this is actually a hard problem, and in math, we like these types of problems because this actually gave me a topic for my dissertation. Actually, the EIT problem is just a data fitting problem. As you see here, you wish to find the sigma that when plugged into this partial differential equation will give the electric potential phi that when compared to the boundary voltages here, you get a minimal error. Okay, so you wish to minimize this objective function. So minimization is an optimization, and optimization is the process of finding the best strategy given a set of conditions. So mathematically, it aims to minimize or maximize an objective function f given a set of constraints or conditions on the variable x. So to illustrate, consider the following function. Okay, the surface plot of this function is shown on the left. A typical scheme starts with an initial guess here in red, and the scheme follows a path towards the minimum here, towards the plot. As you can see, this function is almost flat near the minimum. That is why, even if the solutions are already close to the minimizer, it still took several steps before it converged. To address this problem, one can use a technique called regularization. So what is regularization? So in regularization, you modify the objective function by adding a regularization term. So in this case, we choose this one. So note that you have to choose the term in such a way that the minimizer is the same. Okay? So if we apply the same method, but to this modified objective function, we can see, so using the same initial guess, we can see that the algorithm converged significantly faster. Another approach to solve hard problems is by using heuristic algorithm. Heuristic algorithms are mostly used in solving minimization problem with objective functions that has several local minima. Okay, so they are usually nature-inspired and are population-based. So they start with an initial set of population, so the red ones, okay, and each population is updated per iteration until the population converge to the minimizer, as you can see here in the illustration. Okay, now going back to our minimization problem, we wish to solve this optimization problem. So our approach is by proposing a regularization term, and we use the following regularization term. Actually, using regularization makes the problem easier, but the choice of the term is very tricky. So this is where our research comes in. So we propose an algorithm that solves the arising minimization problem. And in this algorithm, actually, you have to solve 4 different partial differential equations. And we have shown that the numerical solution of these partial differential equations converge to their corresponding theoretical solution. In applied math, numerical results should be supported by strong theoretical framework. And then, so using results from theory of functional analysis and partial differential equations, we have shown that the proposed algorithm has a unique solution. So these are joint works with my PhD advisor, Professor Keeling from the Karl Franz University of Graz in Austria. So to illustrate, as an example, we have the following problem. So because our method is iterative in nature, we have to have a good initial guess. Okay. So what we did was we obtained the topological derivative of the objective function, perform a thresholding step to come up with this initial guess, the white in the middle. And then the algorithm proceeded iteratively and obtained the blue image here. So the black one is the true image. Now, if we look at the EIT system again, note that if electrodes, if the current passes from the electrode to the body, some of the electric potential is lost. So this phenomenon is called contact impedance. A model that incorporates this contact impedance, the second term here, is called the complete electrode model. So this model is an immediate consequence of my PhD research and was studied by Dr. Arian Velasco. So she is a colleague from the Institute, and she finished her PhD from the University of Picardy, Jules Verne, and I served as one of her PhD supervisors. So she actually did her PhD under the Ched Phil France Scholarship. So in our work, we showed that we can use this more realistic model of EIT, and furthermore, we used in our inverse problem a more realistic configuration. So here, we use the following. So this is a cross-section of a thorax of a human body. The blue images represent the lungs, while the one in the middle represent the heart. Okay? So the left one is the true solution, and the right one is the approximate solution. So instead of using regularization, we use here heuristic algorithms. Now, so working with EIT equipped me with skills in numerical optimization that helped me find and solve problems arising from applications. Okay? So actually, this can be applied as well. The regularization technique can also be used in data graduation or smooth approximation of crude data. Okay? Minimizing this objective function will give you the graduated data. So we applied this method to find the graduated data of mortality rates for Filipino males aged 0 to 20. So this result is a joint work with my former student, James Manejero. He was a BS Math student from our institute. Another one is on image processing, wherein the regularization can be used for image denoising. So here, we have an image obtained from the National Museum containing baybayin text. Okay? So minimizing this objective function, we will get this denoised image. And then we propose a scheme to find the edges of the text here. So edge detection of text is used for image registration and data compression. So this is a joint work with Ms. Christine Reyreso. So she was also a student from our institute and an MS student, and she was also a DOIC scholar. So we continued our work on baybayin and explored how to use a support vector machine in character recognition. So support vector machine uses this optimization problem. So we propose an algorithm that recognizes baybayin character and obtain its Latin equivalent. Okay, so this is a joint work with Mr. Rodney Pino, currently a second-year MS student from our institute. Heuristic algorithm can also be used in determining the optimal location of sensors for early detection of tsunami waves. So here is the objective function. So if we minimize this objective function, we obtain the possible placement of sensors. So the T here is computed using the Shallwater equations. Shallwater equations is a set of hyperbolic partial differential equations which model the wave propagation of tsunami waves. So here is an illustration of the propagation using the Shallwater equations. Okay, so this is a joint work with Dr. Ika Magdalena from ITB Indonesia, and my former student, Angeli Fiorellino, was also a DOIC scholar, and last year she received the most outstanding MS Graduate Student Award from the college. So we applied this method to determine the optimal placement of sensors in Cotabato Trench and obtain the following result. Now, finally, optimization can be used for mathematical modeling. So in this study, we propose a model of the transmission of lymphatic filariasis. This is also known as elephantiasis. And actually, this is a neglected tropical disease. Okay? When the parameter values in a model are not available in the literature, parameter estimation needs to be done. Okay? So like the blue ones in here. Okay? So the parameter estimation problem is actually a data fitting problem that solves this minimization problem. So this is a joint work with my former student, Pamela Salonga, was also a DOIC scholar and now a faculty of our institute. My wife, Vicky Mendoza, who works on modeling of infectious diseases, and Dr. Belisario. So he helped us in analyzing our results. So he is the Dean of the College of Public Health in UP Manila. And actually, these works, types of work, problems that translate mathematical theory to applications always drives my curiosity. So using the words of academician Azanza, this curiosity for these types of problem drives my research. And as encouraged by national scientist Fabella, I will continue aiming for the stratosphere, and the search continues. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Rainier. Okay, so now, Dr. Marvin M. Flores is our next presenter. He obtained his PhD in physics from the National Institute of Physics, or NIP, University of the Philippines, Diliman. He is an assistant professor at NIP. His research is focused on physics searches beyond the standard model, and one of his most recent results on supersymmetry will be presented here. A round of virtual applause for Dr. Marvin M. Flores as he presents his study on constraining stealth supersymmetry with illuminated fat jets at the Large Hadron Collider.
Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now. So this work was done with my postdoc supervisor. On the left, Professor Deepak Kar of the Atlas Collaboration, and on the right, Professor Jong-Soo Kim of the Checkmate Group. So before I dive into my specific study, I'd like to motivate first why we are driven, by curiosity in physics. Because when you say physics, right, it's the main purpose of physics is to answer unknown open questions about the universe. The mysteries of the universe that we still don't know. We want to answer those open questions. And for us, physicists, right, the practicality of that pursuit, for that knowledge is not our primary concern. So we don't actually, we don't feel guilty or we don't lose sleep knowing that our study of answering the deepest questions in the universe will never have practical applications at all. Okay, but even if I say that, it is always the case that in physics results are often useful in due course. Okay, so for example, let me give here Michael Faraday, a very famous physicist who in the 1800s actually began studying electricity at the time when everything else was powered by steam engine, right? During that time when he was studying electricity was just a novelty. It's something that you touch and then you get a tingling sensation. That's it. Okay. But then Michael Faraday was like, oh, what is this tingling sensation? Why does it do that? Let me study this thing. And again, he was genuinely curious. He wasn't after I want to study this because it will power my TV or my ref or my stove or whatever. Because during that time there was no electricity, right? Everything was powered by steam. So he still pursued these things. And then, people like got confused, like, why are you devoting your life with this useless stuff, electricity? Like, even though it doesn't have any practical usage, And, Michael Faraday never listened to these people. He used to give, this open lectures open to the public. He would perform experiments in electricity. And there was a time when there was a politician who asked him, Sir Michael Faraday, of what use is electricity, right? Because what are you doing? Why are you studying electricity? That's a useless phenomenon. It just gives you a tingling effect, right? And then, Michael Faraday, he just he got annoyed, but then he just replied, one day, sir, you may tax it. Okay. And again, I want to drive that in, that idea that even though currently the things that we are studying in fundamental physics looks useless, we don't know 100 years from now, 200 years from now, everything will be driven by this. Okay. And again, I always like to talk about, Michael Faraday because I feel a very strong connection with this guy because Michael Faraday is a physicist who was born in poverty. I was also born in poverty. Michael Faraday grew up without electricity. of course, because during his time there was no electricity. I also grew up without electricity, and also I find it very cool that I have like a direct academic connection with Michael Faraday that can be traced all the way up to my postdoc supervisor. But for me, that's not even the coolest thing. The coolest thing is that if you notice, for me, like I find this very cool, is that Michael Faraday and I actually share the same initials. Okay, MF, Michael Faraday, Marvin Flores. Okay, but anyway, let's go to a more modern example of why we pursue these modern questions. Let's take CERN, for example. The Large Hadron Collider. CERN is like a very huge, they do these experiments with a very huge tunnel underground located at the CERN Switzerland, France border, where they collide protons in order to understand the fundamental forces of nature. Okay, and again, when they study this, people ask, but what's the use? What's that for? And whatever. Okay, but they're like, no, we just want to understand. We curiously want to understand up to where the limits of our knowledge, up to where we could push it. Okay, but then of course in the 1980s, that effort led to the World Wide Web. Okay, so the way physicists at CERN share information with each other, because it's an international collaboration, that actually is what led to the World Wide Web. So the World Wide Web was invented at CERN. Did they invent that initially? Were they like, okay, let's do this because we want to invent the World Wide Web? No, they were initially driven by their curiosity to study the fundamental forces of the universe. And then World Wide Web, although very important, without it we won't be having this conversation right now. It's just a byproduct, okay, of their curiosity driven research. And so now, I'd like to show this because, I love that in our country, DOST supports this fundamental driven research. You can see here our own Undersecretary, Rowena Guevara, with the spokesperson of CERN. And I'd like to share also that, recently, just last month, the Philippines became part of the Atlas collaboration of CERN. And we're very, very, very happy and proud of that. And if you check, the Atlas map, the CERN map, before February 2021, our country wasn't there. But then if you check it now, our country is already there. So we are part now of this CERN research. Okay, so now that we've motivated that, let's go into my study. So what I want to happen now is, after the end of my talk, you will understand every word in my title. Okay, and so within a slide, a certain phrase will be underlined. We'll talk about that. First, let's talk about the Large Hadron Collider. The Large Hadron Collider is the tunnel underground within CERN that collides proton particles. And again, we want to do this because in the hopes of understanding the fundamental forces that drives the inside the protons, and maybe we can see new particles and so on. Okay, and I like to emphasize, if you can see here, this is the Large Hadron Collider. Professor Guevara, you can see, ang swerte naman ni Undersecretary Guevara, nagpa-picture siya. This is actually just a tarpaulin. Okay, you're not allowed in there, like you're dead, especially if the machine is on. It's very cold in there, so this is just a tarpaulin. Okay, so para lang, para legit tingnan, but this is a tarpaulin. This is the real thing, the Large Hadron Collider. What is a supersymmetry? So everything else that we know about the universe are comprised of what we call the standard model particles. So these things, the food we eat, our loved ones, the air we breathe, the computer, everything else are made of these particles on the left. The quarks, the photons, the electrons, all these things that you studied in college and in high school. But no matter how beautiful this theory is, there are still open problems. There are still things that it cannot explain. Okay, there are open puzzles. And one of the most beautiful theoretical framework that solves those open puzzles is this thing called supersymmetry. What does supersymmetry do? It presupposes, or it says that for every particle that we know, for example, the electron, there is a supersymmetric partner, which we call the selectron. You just add the letter S in the beginning. For every quark, you have a squark. Okay, and the thing is, it's a very beautiful theory, but we don't actually know whether or not these particles exist. And so for 10 years, we've been looking for supersymmetry, or in short, we call it SUSY. Okay, at the Large Hadron Collider, we haven't seen it, and then people just keep saying, no, just keep on searching. We'll find it eventually. Just like Dory here, finding Dory. So I just change it to finding SUSY. Just keep searching. Okay, and one of the things that like these supersymmetric particles, they have this some sort of signature that tells us why they're there. And just for comparison purposes, let's label this signature as some sort of ID. Okay, so think of this fish, Dory, to be a SUSY particle. Meron siyang ID that tells us na Dory is a supersymmetric particle. Okay, so this ID, it has a technical term, missing energy. That's what we call it, the Large Hadron Collider. But to simplify things, let's just call it an ID. Okay, SUSY particles, they have ID. Okay? And so since we haven't found them yet, there are people who really love supersymmetry who set it up in such a way that they tell us that actually yung susi, there could be a model of supersymmetry. They call it stealth supersymmetry, such that it is stealthy. In other words, it hides itself from the Large Hadron Collider. How does it hide it? It is set up such that it doesn't have a missing energy. Okay. In other words, it doesn't have the ID that I showed you in the previous slide. So think of it this way. Think of a stealth supersymmetry as some sort of a ninja. Kasi stealth siya, diba? So like nagtatago siya. So stealth supersymmetry is a ninja, and these ninjas, they have no ID. And so LHC, people doing experiment at the LHC, they say, we don't see SUSY, maybe it's wrong. People who are doing SUSY, they say, no, maybe you're looking at the wrong thing, because maybe they are already there in your data, but you're looking for an ID when in fact it doesn't have an ID. It's a ninja, it's hiding itself, okay? And so that is stealth supersymmetry. So now if it's hiding itself, now this is where our study comes in. So we ask ourselves, okay, if they are hiding, if they don't have an ID, what are their properties that will help us identify these stealth SUSY signals, or these ninjas, okay? And in the plot here, you can see that these ninjas, these signals are the red ones, okay? This is the peak that we want to see at the CERN, at the Large Hadron Collider, but they are hidden by this blue background, which is the signal. And so it's like finding a needle in a haystack. We want to find this needle, we want to find this stealthy ninja, but then it's covered by this by this background, and then it doesn't even have an ID. Okay, and so we ask ourselves, if it doesn't have an ID, what does it have? Okay, so we look at its properties. So in this study, we applied state-of-the-art techniques in particle physics. We look at its energy correlation functions. We look at its Lisieux angularities and some of its other physical parameters related to these stealth SUSY signals, and we learned a very important thing. We learned that even though these stealth SUSY signals, these ninjas that I call them, even though they don't have an ID, we know that first they are illuminated. That is to say, they have a photon. Okay, photon is a particle of light, but then when you say in your paper the signal has a photon, it doesn't sound good. So instead of saying it has a photon, we say it's illuminated, and also it contains these entities known as jets. Okay, basically jets, these are remnants of the quarks after they collide, but the jets of the stealth SUSYs, they are really, really fat. Okay, and so with these properties now, okay, knowing even though it doesn't have an ID, but we know that it is fat, we know that it is illuminated, i.e. they have a photon. We now use these new properties of our stealth SUSY, our ninja signals, and now we are able to lift it up. We are able to find the needle in the haystack. Why? Because that needle is fat and that needle is illuminated. Okay, and what happened to the background? What happened to the haystack? Well, these guys, they disappear when we introduce the analysis, when we introduce the cut, because these guys, they are not fat. These guys, they are not illuminated. Okay, and so these particular properties, being fat and being illuminated, it's what helped us lift this stealth SUSY signals from the background. Okay, so people said, those who proposed stealth SUSY signals, they said that it can be seen, and then in our paper we just showed that you actually can find these guys. Okay, and here so just to have an overview of what is happening now. So now the first word in our research, it's called constraining. Okay, and this is a very important term. When you say you're constraining a model in particle physics, what you're saying is you're trying to look for the parameters, okay, the parameter space of the model that could still be found at the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, in the experiment at Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, so when we say we're constraining, we're looking at a specific model points that can still be observed at the Large Hadron Collider. Okay, so let's recap. So they said initially that SUSY signals, supersymmetry, these supersymmetric partners, they have an ID, which basically is the missing energy. So you can think of Mario, this guy right here. If you don't know Mario, just think of it as an arbitrary stuffed toy. But you can think of Mario, and then meron siyang ID, which is the missing energy ID. This is what tells us that he is a supersymmetry. So by the way, flex ko lang yung aking CERN ID. But anyway, he has an ID, so it should tell us, okay, this Mario, he is SUSY. Okay, and so if you look at Large Hadron Collider, so you have this guy Luigi. If you're now looking at my video, he doesn't have an ID. Okay, this is not SUSY. Throw him away. Okay, we have this Mario. He has an ID. Oh, this is SUSY. We found SUSY. Why? He has an ID. Okay, but then again, we still haven't found it. Let me recap, okay? And so these guys, they propose, actually, because you didn't find it, it's because you're looking at the wrong thing. These guys don't have an ID. These guys are ninjas, okay? And in our paper, we said, okay, these guys are ninjas, fine. Let's look for that ninjas. What are the properties of your ninjas? Well, these ninjas are fat. Okay, so like if you're a ninja, you can't be fat, because if you're fat, then you can't be as stealthy, right? So these guys are fat. Yes, they don't have an ID, but they are fat. At the same time, they are illuminated. So that's why in my analogy there, nilagyan ko ng ilaw si Mario. Okay, so stealth SUSY signals at the LHC are fat and they are illuminated, even though they don't have the usual ID that we know of in supersymmetry. Okay, so that's basically the main result, the main gist of our paper. Okay, and so with these constraints, with this in mind, with this knowledge in mind, the best constraint that we have so far comes from Atlas, the Atlas collaboration at CERN in constraining these supersymmetric models. Okay, these guys, again, like I mentioned, they rely on missing energy, which is the ID that I was talking about. And in this sensitivity plot, that's how we tell how good analysis is in constraining. The higher the value, it means it's better. So the Atlas analysis, this is a paper in 2018. This is what they have. As you can see, it's very low. The moment we know in our paper that it is fat, the moment we know that it is illuminated, boom, it's the sensitivity increased by a huge factor. Okay, and so so basically that's the main result of that's just basically of our paper. And so to summarize our result. The study, basically we have these models called the stealth supersymmetry, which hides from the Large Hadron Collider by having no missing energy. In other words, by having no ID. Okay, and then we studied this stealth signals and found that even though they have no ID, we learned that they are fat. We learned that they are illuminated, hence they are still detectable. And using this knowledge of them being fat, using their fatness and using their illumination, we were able to obtain a constraint that is better than the best analysis, which is the Atlas collaboration from CERN, okay, which again relied on the missing energy ID. And so for my final words as a takeaway for this paper is that if someone will ask you later, what did you learn? So the thing that you take from my paper is that we look at the SUSY signals again. So this is Mario, okay, and again, we thought that he has an ID. People said, no, he doesn't have an ID. You can't find him. And then we say, no, we can find him. Why? Because he is fat and he is illuminated. Okay, meron siyang flashlight si Mario. Okay, that's the idea of the paper. And so, and this paper, I'd like to add was accepted in back in last year, basically 2020. And again, with my collaborators, my postdoc supervisors, Deepak Kar and Jong-soo Kim. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Flores. I like the Mario. Pwede bang maangkin na lang yung Mario? Okay. So now, Dr. Jude Mikhail O. Abirilla will present his study. Dr. Abirilla is an assistant professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering in UP Diliman. He obtained his PhD from the University of Manchester. His research interests include life cycle sustainability assessment, systems modeling and simulation, and sustainability in engineering education and policy. Let us all welcome on our screens Dr. Jude Mikhail O. Abirilla as he presents his paper, An Integrated Sustainability Assessment of Synergistic Supply of Energy and Water in Remote Communities.
All right, so before I begin, may I ask if the slides are visible and my audio is clear?
Yes.
Yes, Paul. All right, thank you very much, Paul. All right. So good morning to our esteemed academicians at NAST and to everyone joining us today. I'm Jude Abirilla from UP Diliman, and I'm honored and excited to present our paper on integrated sustainability assessment of synergistic energy and water supply. Now, access to electricity, clean cooking, and safe water is identified as key for achieving many of the Sustainable Development Goals. While progress has been made in recent years, the rate of population growth overtakes the improvement of access in many developing countries. More specifically, there exists a gap between urban and rural access to energy and water. For example, in electricity, access rates in rural areas is only at 76% compared to 90% in urban areas, with most rural residents depending on imported diesel and fuel. Even in clean cooking, 41% still rely on kerosene and solid fuels, which pose high risk of indoor air pollution, especially to women and children. For safely managed water, over 1 in 5 residents in rural areas do not have access to improved water access. Now, to efficiently address these big energy and water challenges, we first investigated the current situation of electricity, cooking, and water supply in remote communities. Recognizing the inherent interactions between energy and water access, we proposed an alternative approach to system design by considering multiple production systems working in synergy with each other in the water energy nexus. And we term that as synergistic generation, or Synergen. Now, this study combines scenario analysis, techno-economic simulation and optimization, and life cycle thinking to design economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable systems for supplying energy and water in remote communities to benefit from the synergies that exist between them. In essence, this study presents a framework for proposing and evaluating development pathways for sustainable energy and water access. Now, the Philippines has been selected as the geographical context of the study. This is due to the numerous off-grid small island communities and the country's ambition to transition towards sustainable energy by 2030. Now, similar conditions exist in island and other remote communities in the rest of Southeast Asia, as well as in the Caribbean and Oceania. Now, the following resources shown here in the diagram, as well as technologies for power, cooking, and water supply are included in our scope. Now, we have the following scenarios considered. The current situation is described from 2015 statistics of average energy and water access in off-grid communities. The business as usual scenario considers present trends forecasted into 2030. In the transition scenario, existing energy and water options are still preferred, but renewable technologies are also introduced in the supply mix. Now, the independent scenario assumes community self-sufficiency with utility sectors operating independently of any external fuel or water resources. Now, the advanced scenario considers water and electricity demand grow to match national averages. And lastly, the advanced independent scenario has the same demand profile, but with similar constraints on resources as the independent scenario. So to evaluate first environmental sustainability, we use life cycle assessment, or LCA. Now, LCA is a systematic methodology to account the resource consumption and emissions to the environment of producing, using, and disposing of a product or service. So in the full paper, we looked at 18 environmental impact categories, such as global warming, air pollution, water pollution, land use, ecotoxicity, and resource depletion. So this figure shows some of the LCA results in 5 of the 18 impact categories, scaled relative to the current situation. So clearly, no single scenario performs the best in all impact categories. For example, in the independent scenarios, there's strong utilization of local resources, hence decreasing the depletion of fossil fuels and lower global warming potential. However, consumption of biomass as fuels can generate high particulates, resulting here to some air pollution. Conversion to biogas also has related concentration and leakage of heavy metals into the soil, resulting to a large ecotoxicity potential. Next, we go into the economic sustainability. The total life cycle costs, categorized here as capital and operating costs, show that all other future scenarios, aside from business as usual, have lower annualized costs per household compared to the current situation. While independent scenarios have higher capital requirements, they have the lowest life cycle cost. Most of the operating costs are due here to the purchase of fuels and imported water supply. And lastly, in our third domain of social sustainability, we have several issues selected for this study. As can be seen here, the picture is quite mixed across the scenarios, with the independent and advanced independent scenarios being the best options here, highlighted in green, for 7 indicators. And however, they are also the worst in 4 or 5 others. So the transition scenario is the only scenario that is not the worst option in any indicator. So given the diverse scope of indicators we have shown necessary to evaluate the overall sustainability of energy and water scenarios, multi-criteria decision analysis, or MCDA, is an appropriate framework for integrating the 3 sustainability domains. A key advantage for this integration is the ability to evaluate both quantitative and qualitative criteria. MCDA also helps to improve understanding and resolution of the sustainability problem by promoting stakeholder engagement and resolution. The MCDA decision tree is shown here. As a base case, all social, environmental, and economic indicators are assumed to have equal weights. This assumption is later tested through a sensitivity analysis. To be consistent with the goal and scope of the study, as well as the structure of the variables used, the Vicor method was selected as the MCDA method. So Vicor is a ranking choice method which determines the best, or the set of best options among the available ones. So the Vicor method outputs what we call disutility scores, or the distance from the best state, and also a total score. Here, lower values are preferred. So scenarios with scores below 0.2 are selected or considered to be acceptable sustainable solutions. Provided that the weights of the environmental, economic, and social domains are equal, the set of acceptable sustainable solutions includes the independent and the transition scenarios. The independent scenario performs the best in the environmental, and the transition scenario also has a good performance in the economic domain. On the other hand, the business as usual scenario is the worst option. So contribution analysis shows that the independent transition scenarios are in the upper rankings for all 3 domains, and the opposite is true for the business as usual scenario, which is the worst environmental impacts and the second worst in the other 2 domains. So the remaining 3 scenarios here show that the relative rankings suggest trade-offs in their performance across the 3 areas of sustainability. So the domain weights have been varied in the sensitivity analysis, and the resulting set of acceptable options are presented here as a diagram with 7 regions. So region A here at the corner is at a high social and low environmental weight, where the business as usual scenario can be considered a sustainable option. The advanced independent scenario is found to be an acceptable option when your weight of economic indicators is low. The independent scenario is a sustainable option when the social domain is not the dominant preference. Interestingly, there is a set of domain weights where only one scenario is found to be acceptable or sustainable. So for example, here in region E, where only the transition scenario was found to be sustainable, and here in region G, where only the independent scenario is found to be acceptable. So these 2 scenarios also span the greatest area in the weighting space here, highlighting the robustness of this finding that these scenarios are the most sustainable options for a lot of different stakeholder preferences or weights. So in summary, we have developed and demonstrated a synergistic approach to energy and water planning for remote communities that accounts for and emphasizes interdependence within the energy-water nexus. We have also shown that heading towards an independent scenario with off-grid energy technologies coupled with local utilization of resources can be a feasible and sustainable development strategy for many remote communities. Lastly, we also see that the application of sustainability assessment combined with decision analysis allows stakeholders to identify trade-offs as well as co-benefits of various development pathways. So we forward this to our recommendations. 1. The framework developed here shows the robustness of solutions that can be obtained if energy development policies are expanded to include other utilities such as cooking and water supply. It was also seen from the advanced scenarios that improving quality of life in remote communities will entail higher demand of energy and water. But this need not result to worse environmental outcomes or greater cost to consumers. Lastly, the application of life cycle analysis combined with decision analysis demonstrates that comprehensive life cycle thinking and consideration of stakeholder preferences can lead to feasible and acceptable options that can address multiple sustainable development goals. So as I end this presentation, I would like to thank again my co-authors and wonderful mentors, Professor Adisa Zapagic and Dr. Lawrence Sanford of Sustainable Industrial Systems at the University of Manchester, as well as Dr. Alejandro Gallego-Schmidt of the Tyndall Center for Climate Change, also at Manchester. So this work has been funded through the Ched Newton Scholarship delivered by the British Council and the Commission on Higher Education. For a full list and full access to these papers, please visit the link here or scan the QR code. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aberilia. Now we move on to our next finalist and the last presenter for today, but definitely not the least, Dr. Angelo Irvin S. Choi is an associate professor in the Chemical Engineering Department at the De La Salle University. He obtained his PhD in Chemical Engineering from the De La Salle University in 2016. His research interests are in the field of desulfurization, adsorption, oxidation, and optimization processes. Let us all welcome on our screens Dr. Angelo Irvin S. Choi as he presents his paper, Oxidation by H2O2 of benzothiophene and dibenzonthiophene over different polyoxometallate catalysts in the frame of ultrasound and mixing-assisted oxidative desulfurization.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, you may go.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Angelo Troy, and I'll be presenting the oxidation of sulfur compounds, specifically in the frame of ultrasound and mixing-assisted oxidative desulfurization. So this is my research during my PhD days as a student in the La Salle University, but I have made my experimentations in here in the Tian'an University of Pharmacy and Science in Taiwan. So a little bit more about myself. So I'm an associate professor in the Chemical Engineering Department of the La Salle University. I was a former DOST ERDT scholar during my PhD days as a student. Then now I have 22 publications, an H-index of 8, and more than 300 citations based on the Google Scholar. And a little bit more about myself. So aside from research collaboration, teaching, presenting in conferences, I am also active in church activities such as in music ministries and Bible studies, which personally helps me. So I believe this personally helps me with my holistic development as an individual. So the talk is based on my this research paper, which is entitled Oxidation of Hydrogen Peroxide of Benzothiophene and Dibenzothiopene over different polyoxometallate catalysts in the frame of ultrasound and mixing-assisted oxidative desulfurization. So this was published in Fuel with an impact factor of 5.578 in 2016. And now this is in the 96 percentile with 67 citations in 5 years. So furthermore, I can go through the highlights in my presentation, but you can go over the QR code in the slide, or I can send you a copy upon request of my paper for more details of my research work. So this is a basic presentation outline. So I'll be going first over the introduction, specifically in the background of the study. So as fossil fuel derived oil, so increase in demand through the years, this would risk the stability and sustainability of the environment around us. So diesel oil is an example of fossil fuel that is derived from petroleum. This is composed of thiophenic sulfur. So more than 70% of this is composed of benzothiophene, or BT, and dibenzothiophene, or DBT. So the problem that I want to address in my research is in the high sulfur concentration of an untreated diesel oil. So I want to solve this because using an untreated diesel oil with high sulfur content would cause emission control problems, air pollution, and acid rains. So in here, this is a graphical illustration of the sulfur dioxide emissions from the years 2005 to 2019. So specifically in the years 2011 to 2019, the total sulfur dioxide emissions is decreasing. This is due to the standards of sulfur standards in various countries. So through the years, diesel oil standards is progressively getting tighter. So even if we do not produce diesel oil in the Philippines, we still use diesel. So the desulfurization technology from an environmental standpoint will be beneficial. So specifically in the Philippines, we are now currently in the Euro 4 standard. This means that our diesel oil should be at the maximum of 50 ppm only. So this is until the year 2025. So there are different desulfurization technologies. So the HDS, or the hydrodesulfurization technology, is the one that is conventionally being used in industries today. So there is also biocatalytic desulfurization, adsorptive desulfurization, and oxidative technology. Specifically, in my research study, I am focused on the UAOD and MAOD. So what is UAOD and MAOD? Basically, UAOD is the ultrasound-assisted oxidative desulfurization. This uses an ultrasound probe in order to enhance the oxidation efficiencies towards the sulfur compounds. While, on the other hand, the MAOD is the mixing-assisted oxidative desulfurization that uses a high-shear mixture in order to enhance oxidation efficiency of sulfur compounds. So the significance of the study is basically that using an untreated diesel oil, so without treatment, this has a high sulfur concentration, would cause many environmental problems around us. However, what I want to do is that subjecting the untreated diesel oil with UAOD and MAOD can make diesel oil more environmentally friendly. So these are my objectives. So first is I already tested the oxidation capacity of the various polyoxymetallic catalysts, specifically the sodium phosphotungstate, phosphomolybdic, and silicatungstic acid. So this was tested in the sulfur compounds called DVT and VT. And then this was evaluated to determine the kinetic rate constant and activation energy of these sulfur compounds. So for the materials and methods, basically the oxidation systems in here is that I use the NAPW, PW, PMO, and SIW as the catalyst in combination with the hydrogen peroxide oxidizing agent. So this is my oxidation system, and then the sulfur compounds, DBT and DT. So this is a general schematic diagram of the UAOD process. So the UAOD uses an ultrasonic probe. For the MAOD process, the schematic diagram will be generally the same, except that the ultrasonic probe will be replaced by a high shear mixer. So here is a brief methodology. So I've prepared before a synthetic oil of 500 initial ppm concentration. and then equal amounts of hydrogen peroxide and oil with the addition of the oxidant system, so POM catalyst and the hydrogen peroxide, together with a TOA. So this is a tetraoctyl ammonium bromide, which is used as a phase transfer agent. So the reaction time was from 2 to 30 minutes, and the temperature is 30 to 70 degrees Celsius. So this was based on my preliminary runs. So the sonicator is used for the UAOD process, and the ICA Ultrathorax T25 is used for the MAOD process. This is followed by the centrifugation, and then the GCSCD is used in order to determine the total sulfur count. And then in the oxidation kinetics, I have tested using a first order reaction kinetics and Arrhenius equation in order to determine the rate constant and activation energy, respectively. So for the results and discussion, so the catalytic oxidation of sulfur compounds in here has 4 steps. So the hydrogen peroxide reacts with the catalyst that forms a peroxometal complex. So step 2, this peroxometal complex from the aqueous phase will go to that of the organic phase through the phase transfer agent. So this peroxometal complex will be reacting with the sulfur compound, and then this will be oxidized to form its oxidized sulfur form, or we call this as sulfones. And then after which this peroxometal complex will later go down to the aqueous phase once again, and then the cycle will continue. So for the comparison of different POM catalysts, so these are the graphical illustrations of my results, and from these, I have the following conclusions. So the NAPW, PW, and PMO has greater oxidation capacity than that of the silicotungstic acid. This is because the phosphorus as the central atom has a dominant oxidation over the silicon-based counterpart. Next is that the NAPW and PW has a better oxidation reaction towards sulfur compounds than that of the PMO. This is due to a lower oxidation potential. So specifically, tungsten, or the W there, is less sensitive to reduction than that of the PMO, or the molybdic catalyst counterpart, which favors the occurrence of oxidation reaction. And finally, NAPW performs the best over even the PW catalyst. This is because that the NAPW has a higher solubility that will enhance the oxidation of sulfur compounds towards its sulfone forms. And then now is the evaluation of the UAOD and MAOD process. So from these graphical illustrations, it can be concluded of the following. As the time increases, this will increase the conversion of the DT and DBT sulfur compounds. So this will favor oxidation reaction because of a longer emulsification reaction of the oxidizing agent and the sulfur compound. And then, as temperature increases, this would also increase the conversion of sulfur compound. This is due to the more favorability of the formation of peroxometal complexes that is favorable for oxidation reactions. And then finally, MAOD in here performs a bit better than that of the UAOD process. So based on the oxidation reaction kinetic study, so the rate constant, it can be observed of BT is lower, has a lower rate constant than that of the DBT. This is because of the lower electron density of BT possessed. So a lower electron density will make the molecule more compact, which will be more difficult for oxidation reactions to occur. And then for the activation energy, so UAOD has a bit lower compared to that of the MAOD in terms of activation energy. So this is due to the reaction temperature that has a substantial change on the oxidation capacity. And then based on the comparison to previous studies now, so I have the comparison with the HDS. So this is the conventionally used technologies in industries today. So it can be observed that the HDS has drastically higher operating conditions in terms of temperature and pressure. And then the regular oxidative technology, oxidative desulfurization technology, this has a lower operating conditions in terms of pressure and temperature. However, if I will compare my study, which is the Uaod and Meod process, this would cut the time by 4 times as compared to the regular ODS technology. So for the conclusions, so in here, polyoxymetallate catalyst, so NAPW and PW has the highest oxidation performance, followed by PMO, and then SIW, unfortunately, has the lowest oxidation performance. And then based on the kinetic rate constant, NAPW and the activation energy, which is also NAPW. So NAPW is the best in terms of the kinetic rate constant and activation energy among all of the catalysts that was tested. And then some practical implications in here. So as part of my PhD work, I developed an improved process for desulfurization, which can help improve the quality of air in countries that use diesel oil for many applications. And of course, this includes the Philippines. So before I end this presentation, I want to share that because of the initial results as part of my PhD work in the published paper that I have just presented right now, I was able to further continue the research that resulted in 5 other journal publications in high impact factor journals. So 2 of which came from the Journal of Cleaner Production that has an impact factor of 7.246. So in addition to the paper that I presented, to that of the 5 papers listed here, a combined total of 181 citation has been achieved. So the details of my research paper may be searched through this QR code provided in the screen. Okay, so before I end this, so on my acknowledgement, so I would like to acknowledge my mentors. Of course, my mentors in De La Salle University, specifically Professor Susan Roses, Professor Nathaniel Dugos, and my mentor in the Tianan University of Pharmacy and Science in Taiwan. And of course, the DOST ERDT scholarship. So I will not be able to achieve what I have achieved right now without my mentors and my scholarship. To end this, I would like to say that it has been truly an honor to be presenting to everyone this morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and this ends my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Choi. Okay, a round of applause to all our 5 finalists. We will now have our open forum. We will first entertain questions from our board of judges, and then we will proceed to the questions from our Q&A box here in Zoom, and also from the comment section in Facebook Live. For our first question, board of judges, may I request you to unmute your mic to ask your question.
Yamar.
Okay.
Yamar, may I have the floor?
Yes, Dr. Ruben, you can ask your question.
Okay, first of all, congratulations to all the finalists. Ang gagaling nyo. Lumiligwak ang tanong sa palagay ko sa mga judges. But I would like to ask the first question. And the question is addressed to Dr. Agustin.
Yes po, sir.
Okay, Dr. Agustin, congratulations. Beautiful. My questions are very simple, and I hope this can even clarify some of the questions that may be asked later. First of all, how would you differentiate the monocot and the dicot system?
Okay. Sir, okay, thank you so much po, sir, for your question. So monocot, like for example, in rice, they have a fibrous root system, while in dicot, they have a taproot system. So mostly in dicot, they have as I've said, they have a taproot system, and mostly they produce L-type lateral roots. But in monocot, we have the fibrous root system, and their lateral roots are further classified into S-type and L-type, as I have explained in my presentation.
Okay, I am very impressed that you were able to get that mutant, because I think that mutant will help you a lot. All right, the second question is, I know that this kind of study is a very complicated one, and I noted that you had so many or several collaborators when you did your study in Japan.
Yes, sir.
And you even identified the roles of every member of the team. But what was your main role in that particular study?
Yes, po, sir. So we did phenotyping. Then we also did I did phenotyping, evaluation, and also identification of the causative gene.
All right. The next question is, now that you are in the Philippines, how extensive now is your work towards the goal of producing that kind of root system in the different inbred lines and lines that you are developing at Philippines? And who are your collaborators?
Yes, po, sir. I just came back from Japan this 2020.
Oh, you just came back from Japan.
Yes, po, sir. April 2020, and I started collaborating using this WEG1 mutant and other mutants with Dr. Roel Serralta and also Dr. Neones. And right now, we are currently working under the Crop Biotechnology Center, and we are evaluating first the performance of the mutant under Philippine condition in rain-fed systems, and also simultaneously, actually, we already crossed the mutant to high-yielding Philippine rice varieties, specifically those which are widely grown in our rice fields, like for example, NSIC RC 164.
Who is your main collaborator in the Crop Biotechnology section?
Dr. Roel Serralta po, sir.
Okay. Do you have anyone collaborating in Los Baños for that particular?
I hope, sir. I hope, sir, that we can collaborate with other research institutions, especially working on crop biotechnology and also breeding activities. We also would like to collaborate with ERI and UPLB.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Villarreal. May I ask Academician Balmaceda to ask his question?
Thank you, Dr. Abahante, and thank you also and congratulations to all the finalists for your very impressive presentations and your very good research. Let me ask two questions first from the first and the third speaker. So for Dr. Agustin, I know you did your work on the WEG1 mutant. You did various phases in the study, phenotyping, evaluation, etc. But what innovation or new technique or procedure or process, if any, did you do on this particular mutant that maybe are not applied for others?
Yes, well, sir. So first, the mutant is actually coming from a different research institution, and then we continued on the study of the gene function. And to study the gene function, it takes a lot of process. Like, for example, we have to isolate based cloning, and then afterwards we need to do complementation tests where we have to make transgenic lines, because we have to introduce to the mutant and see if the phenotype has been restored.
Okay, thank you for that. So now let me ask Dr. Flores, Marvin. So I also appreciated your presentation where you tried to really make very complicated concepts more understandable. My question is, when you looked at this stealth Susie model, the toy model, my question is, what made you choose that particular model? Are there, I suppose there are others So why
that's
that
correct.
particular?
So this stealth SUSY model, this is like a famous sub framework of SUSY. So marami yan sila, her parity and so on. So yung stealth SUSY kasi is yung claim niya. So ngayon kasi sir may parang sort of crisis sa LHC kasi after finding the Higgs at CERN, we really thought na we will be finding these supersymmetric particles. You know, makita natin yung selectron, yung stop, yung S bottom and all these things. We found nothing for more than 10 years, okay? So, iba nga, there are like a lot of people who are already giving up on SUSY, even though it's a very beautiful mathematical framework, they're giving up on it. However, there are some people who still say na meron pa silang pinopropose na model that sorts of save SUSY. Parang gusto lang isalvage yung SUSY kasi it's the best theory we have as of now of beyond the standard model, right? So, yung isa dun is yung stealth SUSY. Sinasalvage nila, yung sinasabi nila is, actually, baka yung SUSY nandun na it's already there in the LHC data. You're only looking at the wrong thing. You're looking at the missing energy, okay? But then actually there are specific SUSY models that actually don't rely on missing energy at all. So maybe they're there, but then since you're looking for the wrong thing, you missed it entirely. So yung task namin, sir, so to clarify, yung stealth SUSY has been around since, I don't know, mga mid-2000 or something. So it's a famous model in supersymmetry. So that's the claim. So yung job namin ngayon is, for example, just for the record, yung isa kong postdoc supervisor si Dicot, he really doesn't believe in SUSY. Like he really thinks na SUSY is not, you know, the next thing. Na he doesn't think that every particle has a super partner, right? And so yung claim ng stealth SUSY is these guys are hiding. Okay, so we said, okay, yes, they're hiding. So now what other things can we find in order to like extract these guys that are hiding, diba? Kasi you claim that they're hiding. So okay, we look at our data and then we try to lift these guys out. Ano yung mga specific things na pwede nating makita? So and then yun nga na discover namin na indeed this particular stealth SUSY signals are fat. When we say fat, yung parang mayroong in the collision called the jet, malaki yung kanilang angular opening, and then when we use the term illuminated, what we mean is, yung technical term is, mayroong photon sa loob. Okay, so malaki siya, tapos mayroon siyang photon sa loob, and then if you use these properties instead of the missing energy, we find na it's even worse for SUSY, right? So kasi right now excluded yung supersymmetry, hindi siya, there's no evidence for it, okay? Right now, if we invoke yung pag ginamit natin, if we really take stealth SUSY at face value, they think na they're hiding, it's even worse for them. Like, no, it's even worse when you take stealth SUSY kasi when you now look at stealth SUSY, you're looking at fat signals. Like we should have seen them already kasi they're fat, but then we don't. So yun. So so our paper, it's bad for SUSY basically.
Okay, just a very quick follow-up. Now, specifically, you gave a particular model with some decay
yes.
term, di ba? Yun ba yung pinaka-prototype stealth SUSY model?
No, sir, hindi, sir. That's just like one Feynman diagram. As long as, so yung stealth SUSY model kasi is like, ginagawa nilang kaya wala silang missing energy is ginagawa nilang almost degenerate yung masses ng dalawang particles. So yung when you say degenerate, yung difference ng masses ng mga final states are really small. So the final states can't carry enough momentum, and then these final states are hidden in the Large Hadron Collider, kaya sila may missing energy. But then sinet up nila such that they can't carry this huge missing energy, and hence wala silang missing energy. Okay, so yun yung purpose nila. So as long as you make it degenerate, then you have the prototype for a stealth SUSY model.
Okay, thank you, Marvin and Nonowin. I'll let the others ask their questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Academician Balmaceda. Now we National Scientist Pabella, you have questions?
Yes, please. This is for Marvin Flores or Michael Faraday.
Yes.
One of my heroes, really. In the 1980s, the big thing then was superstrings.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't find the empirical footprint of superstrings. First of all, you cannot, of course, detect the other dimensions. It's up to 10 dimensions. And the reason there is that it's hidden. So it's like the stealth sushi. The dimensions are hidden so that we can detect them. But the most important is that you can't detect. There are no empirical hypotheses that have been tested that are directly associated with superstrings. Supersymmetry is interesting. It's probably closer to reality, and most likely the energy levels at which you can perhaps start to observe is probably lower. But the fact is that we haven't seen yet any SUSY particles. And it's I call these tremendously beautiful models superconjectures. They aim to explain a lot of things. In fact, sometimes the theory of everything. But they are also so removed from reality that we are unable to harness them, except to be able to make sense of the dynamics in low energy particle physics. So, what do you will supersymmetry? How will supersymmetry do better than superstrings? And will it not be relegated as well to the dustbin of history, despite the beauty with which it is endowed?
Yeah. So thank you so much for that question, sir. So in fact, yung superstring, if you're studying a superstring theory, part under na yung supersymmetry actually sa umbrella ng superstring. Okay? So basically, superstring is sinasabi nila yung mga fundamental entities mo instead na point are actually extended in one-dimensional space. Kaya meron kang string. So if you know superstring, then you also know supersymmetry. Parang subset yung supersymmetry ng superstring. So pwede mo isipin na meron kang string, tingnan mo siya like pag ganun head-on, para siyang point, para siyang, so ma-deduce mo actually yung supersymmetry from superstring. Now, the difference, that's why may mga ibang tao na nag-focus on supersymmetry, and then there are those hardcore nandun sila sa superstring, is that superstring, may nag-argue, sir, na hindi physics yung superstring. Because to be physics, you have to be experimentally verifiable. Dapat meron kang like communication with the actual experiment, diba? So yung your superstring on paper is very, very attractive because siya yung theory na alam natin na nagko-combine nung general theory of relativity ni Einstein, the theory of the very large, at yung quantum mechanics, the theory of the very small, which we need, or when you look at objects like the beginning of the universe or at the vicinity of the black hole, you're looking at a very huge object in terms of yung mass niya, very massive, but very small in terms of the fact na compressed siya in a very single region, right? Big Bang is the entire universe, so it's very massive, but compressed to a very single point. So mathematically, general relativity and quantum mechanics is a mess. Superstring, at least on paper, offers us a solution. Now, the problem with superstring is that you need insanely high energies to be able to prove its claims. Okay, so we're talking about like cosmic energy na it's not even if gagawa ka, sir, ng collider na, di ba yung collider natin sa sir is 27-kilometer ring, right? It's a very huge, it's like encompassing the border in France and Switzerland. It's a very huge ring. Now, even if gagawa ka ng collider na iikot sa buong Earth, you won't still be able to probe superstring. So yung chance mo is gawa ka ng mga collider in outer space. So that's why people find supersymmetry more grounded or more medyo malapit sa experiment. It's because yung mga predictions nila lie at the TeV scale, which is yung currently na pinoprobe ng Large Hadron Collider. So yung Large Hadron Collider currently runs at 13 TeV. Okay? And then, so currently, 2021, naka-long shutdown siya. I-on sana siya ulit ng 2020 but then nagka-COVID, so hopefully this year ma-on siya ulit, and then it will run again up to 2035. Okay, and again, the nice thing is yung excited ako is in that period of time, the Philippines is already part of CERN during that time. Kasi we entered Atlas collaboration in 2021. Okay, so during that era, up to 2035, we're hoping at least may mga tao pa na who are like followers of supersymmetry na makikita natin siya eventually until 2035, right? So if not, then may plano sila na gumawa pa ng the International Linear Collider sa China, meron pang future circular collider, mas malaki pa sa CERN. But again, they keep on chasing supersymmetry because supersymmetry is phenomenologically mas malapit siya on experimental numbers. As opposed to supersymmetry na medyo godly siya na theory. Like it's so out there, sobrang high energy yung requirement niya, we can't even experiment with it. So yun.
So is it a super conjecture or
I would say superstring would fall into that. Yes, yung supersymmetry, I'd say na it is still verifiable pa siya kasi we can still put constraints to supersymmetry. Something na we can't do so superstring. So I would say na superstring, sir, is papasok dun sa sinasabi nyo na super conjecture. Yeah, but again, I'm not a superstring theorist, so I believe someone with that background would be able to defend it better.
Is the goatee part of the supersymmetry community?
Hindi, sir, kasi pag nakita niyo yung picture ng dalawa kong postdoc supervisor, mga clean cut sila. So, not necessarily.
Okay.
Thank you po.
I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Choi. Dr. Choi, I'm impressed by the advances that you have made in desulfurization. Some people, however, will say that you are ahead of the curve. I'm asking Dr. Choi now. Hello?
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Choi.
Can you hear me?
You are ahead of the curve in desulfurization.
Yes.
But you might be behind the curve in the bigger picture of power generation. In the sense that I, for example, I'm involved in low carbon footprint myself. But we are talking natural gas here, and of course, eventually renewables. Some people are saying, for example, that ICE engines will be phased out, and in 2030, we will not have them anymore, and we will all have non-fossil-based power generation. So, what do you say to that? I'm sure you are asked about this question from time to time. You are ahead of the curve in desulfurization. But you're working on a technology that is 19th century. On the other hand, the emerging technologies are 21st century technologies are away from fossil feedstock. Okay, so that's my question.
Okay. Yes, I am aware that I've seen some researches before that the use of diesel oil, they say, will end around 2030. But when I recently have done some research, this was pushed to 2050. Maybe my research now is still relevant because unless we already have relevant or concrete evidences that it is already plausible to give up on fossil fuels, so such as we have enough renewable energy, we have that can sustain us worldwide, then this desulfurization topic of mine, I think this is still relevant in our time today. So I believe also that I think that this will be relevant even at least until my lifetime. So that's why I'm not yet stopping my field of research for the desulfurization. But I do agree, science do change over years. So with that change, we should also evolve with it. Yeah.
No, what you can say actually, Angelo, is that your results may actually be useful for other things,
yes.
Not just for fossil-based technology, but for other things. Who knows? It's like the work on black holes. Some people got the Nobel Prize. I know that Etouft got the Nobel Prize. Etouft was, by the way, a visitor in Bohol, in Hagna Bohol, at the RCTP conference run by the two Bernidos. And 2 years later, he got the Nobel, and he talked there about black holes. So you would say, well, it is so far-fetched, but it suddenly became modern again. So that what I'm saying is your results are valid for a particular piece of in a particular universe, but there are other universes. We live in a multiverse. So, but anyway, congratulations. I know that you are head of a research team rather than, but I suggest that you look around for other applications of your techniques.
Yes.
That will make you less than an advocate of a sunset technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Carlo.
Okay, thank you very much, National Scientist Pabelia. Now, Concepcion is raising her hand. Ma'am Gisela, you can ask your question.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I am floored by the presentations of our finalists. I am in awe of your research, and this provides an opportunity for learning among yourselves the different fields of science and engineering. It's a great opportunity to get our top-notch young scientists together here. So in the interest of time and equal opportunity for each of our finalists, I would like to ask a question to each one, simple, and I hope that you can answer in maybe 3 minutes. Okay? So I will just start with Dr. Agustin. Dr. Agustin, I would like to know how the hydroxyproline rich protein interact. Do you hear me?
Yes, Paula.
Would interact with its receptor or something in the environment that would trigger elongation, lateral elongation. With elongation, knowing what is unique about hydroxyproline. Okay, so we're talking about the chemical or biochemical properties of proline as an amino acid that is hydroxylated. Second, how does it interact with the auxins, which we know are elongation hormones, knowing the structure of auxins? So that's my question to Dr. Agustin. My question to Dr. Mendoza, and I am floored by all of your presentations, I must say, and the way you presented them and showed how you're now cascading your knowledge to younger scientists whom you are mentoring. So Dr. Mendoza, EIT is electrical impedance tomography. And you say that you're comparing it with CT scan, which is like standard diagnostic for bones and joints, just like MRI is standard for soft tissues, right? And we more or less know how both of them work as medical imaging instruments. So how would you then assess the potential EIT to become a third standard of care medical imaging instrument, given the properties of the practical potential through the tissues and the conductivity in the tissues versus X-ray in CT scan and ultrasound in MRI. So that's my question. Okay. Third is addressed to Marvin Flores. It's amazing. It's how you've really done the call of President Rod for curiosity. I think in the realm of theoretical particle physics, it's all unleashed. The creativity, no rules, nothing barred. Okay? So I'm just curious how you go about that process that every scientist should know or explore, which is we know it's no longer the linear practice of science. It's an iterative process, okay, where you can dream, you can hypothesize, and then you can design your experiments to prove your hypothesis. But in this space that you're working on, it's really challenging because it's almost bordering on the issue of existentialism, which is very, of course, physics is very philosophical, right? So I would like to know how you or your colleagues came up with this hypothesis of the fat and the oily. Sorry, is fat and what's the other property? Enlightened. Sorry. And I'm just curious because, yes, you have this hypothesis, and then you then showed some evidence of this evidence. And I'm just curious because it's so critical to understand how, say, the instruments provide the evidence, okay, for something that is almost unreal or still unreal. So you're chasing after. So
Lahat ng speaker nasa kanilang ba?
I would just like to point out my favorite, which is the Heisenberg guy, the uncertainty principle, where viewing or disturbing a phenomenon through, say, an instrument is going to change the character of the phenomenon, right? This Heisenberg uncertainty principle. How does it apply to particle physics? And what's the level of uncertainty? Okay. And my question to Dr. Aberilla is, I think it's very, very relevant what you're doing. I didn't quite catch the data that you based your LCA on. So we know that there's a very strong group at De La Salle led by academician Raymond Tan that's applying the LCA. But in your case, you also did the stakeholder analysis. And I think this is a very important field of research, very relevant to region-based community development and progress in the country. Okay. Finally, for Angelo Troy, I would like to commend your very clean chemical study on the determination of reaction rates, okay, and the Arrhenius energy of activation, okay, the way a chemist would do it. So congratulations on that. But I would also like to echo the concern of Anas Raul Fabella, but on another front or in another light, and that is how feasible is it to establish this desulfurization process in the Philippines? How did you do a cost benefit analysis? Did you determine the cost of your catalysts, etc.? And my second question to you is, since your sulfur containing compounds were used in pure form, how would you perform the desulfurization process when your two compounds are in their natural diesel oil form? So those are my questions, and I hope you can answer them in 3 to 5 minutes each. Thank you.
So I'll go ahead. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your question. For the first question, which is the regulation of the hydroxyproline glycoprotein in the cell wall, so far, these are very important questions, and it will give us also further understanding of how the L-type lateral roots will be regulated. But so far, we only know that the hydroxyproline glycoproteins are secreted into the cell wall, and they associate, or they are cross-linked into cell wall components and then they regulate cell wall extensibility, and so that this cell elongation will also be regulated. But we haven't yet understood so far, or in-depth study, how this hydroxyproline glycoprotein regulates the cell wall components, like, for example, microtubules. So I think this is also a good further study of this project. And for the second question, which is its interaction with auxin, also in this aspect, we haven't yet done experiments of this interaction of this protein with auxin. But so far, auxin is regulating cell elongation. So that's why we studied the auxin on how this is being change during the wavy root phenotype. But we would like to emphasize in this study, or in this auxin regulation, that after there was a bending, this auxin accumulates at the outer side of the bent region, and this is also another mechanism in order to produce the type lateral roots.
Thank you, Nonowin.
So thank you po, ma'am, sa inyong questions. Share ko lang po yung screen kasi para mas obvious. So actually po, ma'am, totoo po yan. Yung CT at saka yung MRI, yung kanyang resolution ay very, very good. Yun yung problema po sa EIT. Yung resolution na makukuha mo ay hindi okay currently. Kaya po yung research talaga sa kanya, aggressive, parang dumadami yung research. Kasi nga po, as you can see here, meron po tayong electrodes, tapos meron tayong computer. Ang kailangan mo lang dito ay yung electrodes at saka yung computer. Tapos, ang maganda pa sa kanya, di ba, pag mag-MRI ka, hindi ka naman pwedeng nakahook sa MRI for like 24/7. So kung kunyari, gusto mo lang ay lang function monitoring, ang current na nilalagay lang naman dyan, hindi naman siya, parang very small amount lang naman. So actually, pwedeng nakahook yung EIT sa isang pasyente for the whole day, and you will see, you can monitor the distribution inside. Hindi mo siya magagawa sa CT at saka sa MRI because you don't want to subject the patient to radiation 24/7. Isa pa, yung EIT ay very portable. So you cannot bring MRI or CT scan in the barrio. Whereas this one, you can bring it anywhere as long as you have a socket to plug in. And actually, na-present ko lang ay mga applications ng EIT sa medical imaging. But actually, this has been used in non-destructive evaluation of machine parts. So essentially, if you have a machine and you don't want to open the machine, you can just hook the electrodes at the boundary. So run your current, because the machine is conductive, you will get a resolution of the inside without opening the machine. So same for if you have like some rocks, or if you want to scan for some mineral deposits. And I saw one study that uses EIT to see the distribution inside, for example, a tree, an old tree, because you can just the tree has a liquid inside, so it's also a conductive. So you can put electrodes around a tree. So the applications of EIT can be applied anywhere. You can bring it anywhere. So that is why this is a very growing field. And of course, the resolution is not as good, but with the current supercomputers, the computations, and the development in machine learning and data science and applied mathematics, this will help get a more accurate and more good resolution while having a machine that is very portable significantly cheaper, and does not use radiation. Yun po, ma'am. Thank you po.
Maraming salamat, Rainier. So, gusto ko lang sabihin na meron tayong real-time cell analyzer sa lab ko sa NSI. And the basis is impedance, electrical impedance.
Wow.
No? So, ginagamit ko yun, and which highlights the value of what you're doing, which is time course. So, the way you do it now, portable, and then mura at lahat. And you can actually monitor changes in a biological system. Not necessarily na geological, no? Ibang geological time. Pero biological time, maaring ma-monitor mo. And there is great information, valuable information over the time course. Okay?
Yes po.
Salamat.
Thank you po. Noted po, ma'am. Noted. Thank you po.
So regarding the question, to just reiterate, I believe it was something to do with how we go about with the being able to pick out the fatness and the illumination of the stealth SOC signals, and then also regarding the uncertainty. First on the fundamental uncertainty of Heisenberg, and then the uncertainty that with what we studied. So first, how we go about in studying phenomenology in particle physics is that since hindi tayo sure na yung supersymmetry is actually real or is actually how the universe is being observed, what we actually do is we have these things called simulators. Okay, so we have tools in particle physics that actually simulate signals, and we know that in order for us to, as a sanity check, to make sure that these simulators, we call them Monte Carlo generators, to make sure that these generators are correct, we feed them known collisions or known particles that we already know what the behaviors are from the standard model from what we see in the experiment. So isi-simulate ng generator and then ko-compare natin with the experiment. Okay? So these are known things. And then that's how we know na, yung generator natin medyo legit, kapani-paniwala siya. And then what we do is, iti-tweak natin depending on your theory. So meron kang theory na supersymmetry, meron kang theory na extra dimensions. Depending on what you add on your theory, so meron kang, let's say, mga bagong terms on your equations, then magbabago ngayon yung Monte Carlo generator. Mag-simulate siya ngayon ng bagong set of signals that is catered to that new theory. And then this set of signals ngayon, yun yung they are simulated in such a way na they are comparable with the data that we see from collider experiments. For example, from LHC, from Fermilab, and all those things. And so that way you can compare. So yung ginagawa namin, ma'am, in the paper is side ng simulation. So we simulated the stealth supersymmetry kasi nga, like I said, we don't know if it's really true or not. So we can't say, okay, experiment natin tapos hintayin natin makita siya kasi we're not really sure if it's really there or not. Okay? So isa-simulate siya natin and then makita natin yung collision. And then from the simulation, dun namin inaral, okay, yung mga properties na unique to that particular signal, and then dun nga namin na pick out. There are like a plethora of parameters that you can study. You can spend your entire lifetime just looking at this particular signal, picking out ano yung unique sa kanya. But then it turns out in our case, we were fortunate enough to find na meron siyang prominent property, which is its fatness and the illumination. And so with respect to yung uncertainty, you mentioned, ma'am, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So this Heisenberg uncertainty principle is contained within quantum mechanics, and this is an uncertainty na we can't do anything about this. Diba? In experiments, we try to linisin yung mga ruler natin, we try to make sure na sakto yung mga equipment natin, just to make sure na ma-minimize natin yung uncertainty. However, built in the laws of physics, meron talagang uncertainty na hindi mo kayang walain. We will always be uncertain. There is always an uncertainty encoded in the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now, the nice thing about the standard model is it is written in the language of quantum mechanics. So yung Heisenberg uncertainty principle, ma'am, actually encoded na siya dun kapag gagawa ka, for example, ng generator. Nandun na yung uncertainty. Now, there's another type of uncertainty na pwede ka kasing, so aside from that fundamental uncertainty, pwede kasi na may uncertainty yung ginamit na generator kasi marami kang Monte Carlo generators na pwedeng gamitin. So pwedeng may uncertainty ka dun. And in fact, if I can share, I'll try to share a screen. So i-share namin yung may plot kami if here figure 7 from the paper. So this, I saw this in the presentation, yung sinasabi ko na sensitivity, the higher the value, the better it is. Okay, yun yung sinabi ko. So makita nyo na if walang error, yung analysis namin, no error, ito yung performance niya, it's high, right? But then we gave a generous error of 50%. Sabihin namin, okay, but what if like meron siyang 50% error? Is it still good? And we showed here na even at 50% uncertainty, the fact na if you look at the fatness and the illumination, it's still better than the existing atlas who are looking at the missing energy ID. Okay, so yung uncertainty na Heisenberg encoded siya within the theory of the standard model, and then of course you can to be generous, hindi ko sabihin na ito result namin. There should always be an uncertainty. It's always part of the results when you publish in phenomenology papers. So yeah, thank you po.
Maraming salamat, Marvin. Satisfied ako sa sagot mo at infectious ang iyong enthusiasm. And I like the sanity, the simulation, and then of course yung explanation of uncertainty. So important now because of probabilistic data science related uncertainty, no? Pero what you showed in your data also is the trend, the pattern, the consistent pattern. So napaka-importante. Salamat.
All right, I'll go next po. Thank you again po, Dr. Gisela, for the question. Regarding the first one about the LCA data, it's very interesting you've mentioned the group of Dr. Raymond Tan, because actually Dr. Raymond was the editor in charge for this paper. So he was able to also give comments about the data that we have. In terms of how we collected the LCA data, like the technologies that we've investigated are already commercial. So the production, assembly, installation, information, and data are already available. What we did is to do the technical simulation so that we know how it will perform in the context that we wanted, that is in off-grid remote communities. So from that technical simulation, we're able to improve on the data of our life cycle assessment, and thus it gives us results that are now contextualized in the scope of the study. And you've also commented on the stakeholder analysis. And yes, we really agree, especially in the field of sustainability, that stakeholder analysis is very important. So the original work plan, we wanted to actually do really on-site, like field surveys. However, the constraints on time and resources, we now shifted to do instead a sensitivity analysis and explore the whole range of options. Yun nga po, different combinations of preferences in terms of social, environmental, and economic domains. So that's where we found out now, okay, even if we have different preferences, we might agree on a common thing, on a common conclusion that, let's say, this type of system is feasible and acceptable for our community. So that's one way po that we've incorporated stakeholder analysis in our study po.
Salamat. Sabi ko, Raymond, ang ganda ng mga models, ng mga LCA-based models. Time to test the models sa yung nila sa industry, di ba? Sa community, LGU. So, follow-up question, meron ka plano na gawin yan? I mean, if the model is good, then, you should move on to the next phase, which is to try to convince an LGU to test your model.
Yes po. So actually, we currently have, I'm working with colleagues po, and we're trying to promote itong framework namin combined with, let's say, technical simulation or optimization tools, essentially for energy development. Especially in terms of the early feasibility studies, na ma-include po namin yung, okay, aside from being technically feasible, that you also have good economics, you're also getting benefits in terms of socio-environmental outcomes, and of course, we try to also involve really stakeholders na, okay, who are the decision makers here, and how will they be able to use our results. So we're pushing for that kind of application din po.
Water and energy, pinaka-importante.
Yes po. Thank you po.
Okay, so I think it's my turn. So For the first question, I think this is regarding the how long or how far are we in the possible implementation in the Philippines. So I actually have conducted some research and have done some interviews with to some of my friends who are working in big oil companies in the Philippines. I found out that this has not yet been implemented, the oxidative desulfurization technology. But there are already talks about this concept of oxidative desulfurization in their companies. So I think this is a really good sign in the aspect of my research. So I'd say maybe it's not very far from implementation in the Philippines, maybe around 5 to 10 years, optimistically, I think. Yeah. So that is what I've done in just a quick survey that I did in the past since I came back in the Philippines just late last year, because I've done my postdoc research in Korea for 4 years. Yeah. So on the aspect of the cost-benefit analysis, actually, this is the research direction that I want to go in next, because I have not yet done a cost-benefit analysis in this aspect of my research. But I already have data, like I found out that the benefit that we have in removing sulfur dioxide emissions are around $200,000 per ton. And then I see that in Southeast Asia alone, we are producing around 125 metric kilotons per year, of sulfur dioxide emissions. So I have those data, and that comment is actually a good comment, because this is a possible research direction that I am gearing towards, to perhaps gearing in such a way for possible potential research collaboration, maybe with one of the participants here right now. And then to answer the last question about what if the sulfur compounds that I've used were combined or been subjected to actual diesel oil. So actually, I have done a study regarding the desulfurization of diesel, the actual diesel oil. And I'm happy to inform that the results that I got satisfies the Euro 4 standards that we currently have now. So Euro 4, it means that the sulfur concentration of the diesel oil should be at most, maximum is at 50 ppm. So I have satisfied that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelo. Glad to know. Thank you, everyone, for your responses. Congratulations all.
Thank you po, Academician Concepcion. Now, may I call Academician Torres? Do you have questions for the finalists?
Yeah,
okay.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you po.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been listening intently to the presenters, and I can congratulate them for their eloquence in explaining their results and their procedures. And therefore, I have no question regarding your individual work. What I'd like to ask about is, what will you be doing in the future in the context of the new work situation, not only in our country, but also globally? And so I know you've worked with computers, you've worked with hardware, with software, and so on. But now, in working with your institutions and network of institutions, locally and globally, how do you see your work in collaboration with your like-minded colleagues in the Philippines as well as abroad? And in particular, I'd like to ask the question, what can you contribute towards perhaps enabling this type of work, your type of work, in a new type of environment? And so that's my very general question, but I'd like to hear your response individually. Thank you. Alphabetically, pwede?
Sige po, if it's alphabetical by last name, I think I would go first. Sige po, in my work po, I really highlighted the advantage of life cycle thinking and stakeholder engagement through decision analysis. So actually, I was able to meet and talk to some colleagues, for example, in Philippine Business for Environment. So they're an organization trying to promote sustainability in organizations and companies. So that's one direction where I'd like to pursue, is to apply these sorts of like practices and this sort of awareness, so that it's not just limited to papers and scholarly articles, but rather it's being put into practice in businesses, in organizations, even in government. So like, there's also last year they just launched the branch for environmental product declarations here in Southeast Asia. It's based in Indonesia, but I'm also trying to work with them so that they can bring some of their initiatives here to the Philippines. So promoting things like product environmental footprints that you can actually it's going to be very useful for our local industries, because some countries do look for environmental product declarations for import. So that's one thing that could also be pursued, where my expertise and my research can help locally.
Yeah, just to respond to that, are you saying that there's no change in the way you will do things in the future, in spite of the obstacles that confront you and your colleagues from not only in Metro Manila where you work, around the country, in ASEAN and so on? Is there something that can be done to further that kind of your kind of work in collaboration with people who are remotely located from you? That's the gist of my question, because we foresee that in the future, because of the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic, people will be forced to work remotely from each other. People will be forced to access resources that are not available to them in their own country. And people will need to communicate not only through papers and reports and communication, but perhaps in an interactive, near real-time, if not real-time basis, if they are to pursue the kind of work that is demanded by society in the future.
Well, so I think one advantage, at least in my type of work, is that we are data-driven rather than experimental. So one initiative we are trying to develop now is to try to formulate a sort of software as a service kind of initiative. Now, for example, the framework that we've developed and the types of like indicators, we can put it like a dashboard, for example, and that could be available online, and that would make it easily accessible as long as, of course, you have an internet connection. But again, it does promote that kind of communication that, okay, if we can package it into a user-friendly interface that stakeholders can themselves explore different scenarios, maybe they would become more involved or invested in sustainable energy and water access.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Agustin?
Okay, I think it's my turn. Thank you, sir, for your question. So I think in this new normal, agriculture is still a very important mover in this situation. And agriculture is in the front line to address the needs of the people or the communities. So in our work, we still have to continue pursuing development of reading lines that are adaptive to stress environments. So locally or remotely, as a plant breeder and researcher, we still have to develop our reading lines in the institute. And as for the other aspects of genetics or breeding, such as the use of databases, we can collaborate with other institutions or our partners in doing genetic researches through this online platform by sharing databases and also sharing information, like, for example, sequences of the gene or experimental techniques. And also, even if we are in this situation, I think that in our work, we still have to push to be present in the institute at some point, although at some point we can also do some remote works.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Choi, Dr. Choi.
Okay, so in my aspect, so I'm gearing towards like what I've said a while ago, the cost-benefit analysis of the desulfurization technology. So while we are now in a state of pandemic where it's very difficult to conduct actual experiments, perhaps focusing more on the modeling works, such as determination as well of cost-benefit analysis, it will be very applicable or timely in these days that we are experiencing right now. So in that sense, I will not be stopping just in the cost-benefit analysis, but also, since now we are in the Euro 4 standard in terms of diesel oil, the environmental standard for the Philippines is Euro 4, which is 50 ppm requirement. I'm thinking of developing a model simulation because I already have some equations wherein I can quantify the sulfur reduction of diesel oil. However, this would require some modeling, and my goal is I should be reaching at around the standards of Euro 5, Euro 6, which is around 10 ppm. Because other countries, like in the EU, European Union, so those countries are already way ahead of us, specifically way ahead of Asian countries, which is a much more stringent. And as time goes by, because the Euro 4 is projected until 2025 in the Philippines, so perhaps after 2025, this will become a timely research that we will have, or this will become a relevant research that should be conducted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Flores? The resources are in Switzerland, right?
That's for yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. So two parts po yung sagot ko. So yung una is what I bring back. So it's very important because, like I mentioned, we are now part as of February 21, we are now part of CERN. We are now part of the Atlas collaboration. So now, if ever merong fundamental discoveries in terms of, physics, like in particle physics, let's say na discover yung CERN, Philippines will be there. Kasi like back into 2012, for example, when the Higgs, one of the momentous occasions in science, the Higgs boson, the God particle, the one responsible for giving everything their masses, when it was discovered, Philippines was just an outside spectator. We weren't there. We weren't part of CERN. We were happy. Yes, we've discovered Higgs, but like we weren't contributing to anything. Okay, so now moving forward, 2021. So me and my students, we being part of the Atlas collaboration. So we will now be able to contribute with this new discoveries. But discovering yung supersymmetry will be there. Okay, and so in this, so yung next part, sir, is in this new normal. The funny thing is, even before the pandemic, even before the lockdown and all these things, sanay na yung CERN with this setup. Kasi like I said in my talk, CERN basically invented the World Wide Web, okay? They were, since the 1980s, sanay sila na yung collaboration nila nasa US, nasa Taiwan, nasa China, nasa And so even during that time, meron na silang very robust mechanism of sharing information. And that's why they even share that to the world. Like, oh, this is how we share information. Okay, everyone use it. World Wide Web. That's basically how they did it. It started in CERN. Okay, so they have a robust mechanism for that. And the nice thing, sir, about Atlas is now that we're an Atlas member, so yung only thing is, like I said, sanay na yung Atlas with this, collaboration, even when you're not in the same room with your fellow physicists. And the nice thing is, since now we are an Atlas member, we have full access to CERN data. Okay, and since yung CERN data, this is not just like any type of data. We are talking petabytes. No computer can process this. Like kahit na yung meron kang like computer na sobrang mahal in your house or in your nothing can process this. You need the CERN servers, you need the CERN clouds. So the nice thing about being part of Atlas, so say for example, tayo ngayon, meron akong like CERN domain on my students, I can give it to them. The nice thing is if meron tayong Atlas with access with the Atlas collaboration is that they only need an internet connection. It doesn't have to be fast, right? As long as they can give commands, they can say a string of commands. They can say, okay, do this. Yung first command say yes. Second command 1+1. Second command no, and so on. As long as their laptop can do that, then the CERN servers, the CERN clouds, sila yung magpaprocess ng data. So you don't even have to have a fast computer. Okay, because everything is processed in the cloud. So kahit na meron ka lang, yung paload ka ng 50 pesos sa, I don't know, sa Smart or Globe, tapos kahit yun lang yung data mo, you can access Atlas, then the CERN, the Switzerland, the one in the servers in there, sila bahala nung processing, sila bahala mag-store ng data and everything. So like I said, at least on our part, medyo sort of prepared na kami kasi we've been doing this, like yung video conference. We've been doing, the CERN community has been doing this for years. So parang sort of sanay na kami. And so moving forward, yes, we will be able to cope for, sir.
Thank you. And lastly,
good afternoon po. Good morning po pala. Good morning po. So actually po, I work on numerical optimization. And ngayon, dahil sa new normal, yung mga tao nag-work na lang sa bahay. And puro yung mga data, parang essential na ngayon yung data. So yung mga analysis ay data-driven, ganyan. For example, in machine learning, deep learning, optimization is on the core of deep learning. Okay, so if we develop techniques that can help progress numerical optimization, that will in turn improve the industry. But for us, actually sa math, we are actually katulad ni Dr. Flores, medyo swerte rin kami kasi kailangan lang namin ay pen and laptop para mag-work. So, itong setup sa new normal actually ay naging okay naman with my collaborators kasi nga ay kailangan lang ng computer and the simulations are done using our laptops. And itong mga nakaraang years, medyo ako ay na-realize ko na mayroon akong capacity to mentor students. And gusto ko sana, dahil nga new normal na, parang puro mentoring ko so far from institute lang. Parang maybe I can do mentoring outside my institute. Kasi I notice na kapag sa mga conferences, kanyan, pag-attend ka ng annual conference ng math, puro mga from UP, from Lasal, from parang same universities, pero wala masyado from other SUCs. And so, ang naisip ko ay, what if pwede ako mag-mentor outside the institute. And actually, noong 2019, we did an extension work. So we did a research training for math sa Bicol, sa Partido State University. And actually, I was impressed by the participants. So iba, galing pa sa ibang parts ng Bicol, tapos nag-roro pa. Parang yung mga topics na discuss, medyo mathematical, pero lahat talaga sila very enthusiastic. Talagang nagna-notes, ganyan. Tapos ngayon, meron akong isang graduate student from Partido State University who's working with me now, and my wife, Vicky. And actually, taga Partido State University siya, ay nakapag-collaborate kami kasi kahit kailangan lang namin ng internet. Tapos 2 weeks ago, meron akong estudyante na from ITB Indonesia, so dun sa Indonesian siya. Tapos nakakollaborate ako with Ika Magdalena, and ako naging super co-advisor ako nung estudyante. So naka-defend siya ng thesis niya 2 weeks ago, and it was successful. Kasi po, so math now is, yung applied research sa applied math ngayon ay hindi na pwedeng simulation theory. Kapag submit ka sa journal, gusto nila supported by empirical data. So, hindi na pwedeng lone island ngayon yung math. Kailangan ay data-driven, supported by theory. Kaya yung collaboration ngayon, I think, ay kailangan ay ma-enhance, and I think dahil nga sa new normal, naging easier yung collaboration ko, at least with other scholars, and yung pag-organize ng mga conferences naging easier din kasi parang dati kailangan pang concern mo pa yung parang pag-invite ng speaker kasi ay hindi sila makapunta sa Pilipinas kasi malayo, pero now conferences online na. Parang invite mo siya, magugulat ka. Ngayon yung MSP namin, yung this year, si Sir Jomar kasama sa plenary. Puro international yung aming plenary speakers. Kasi this was possible because of the new normal. So maybe, pwedeng magamit itong pagiging online para mag-share ng knowledge. Para ay yung development kunyari sa research ko sa math, hindi lang centered sa chosen sa mga top universities, dahil accessible nga siya, magiging siya sort of ma-feel na rin yung research kahit nasa buong Pilipinas. Yun po. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. My closing message is really sometimes data that you have in databases, meaning past data, may not be enough. And you have to look at the future, and you don't know what that data is, right? And sometimes other people may have gotten it, but you have not. So, huli ka, diba? So, by having a mechanism that allows you not only to share information, not only to share the results of your simulation, but perhaps to learn from each other on a wide-scale basis and continuing basis rather than because you're preparing a paper, right? And to give you an example, I've learned about something which is done differently in the US than in Europe, than in Asia Pacific, diba? The technology may be advanced in these other countries I mentioned, but in our countries, we are behind. And we have this tendency, perhaps, to say, huli na tayo. Pero hindi eh. Baka yung technology nila para sa kanila, hindi appropriate sa atin. Kaya lang, hindi natin alam kung ano yung appropriate sa atin. Kasi yung data natin, pasay na, di ba? So yun yung mga concepts na perhaps if you want to have impact in your work, not only social impact, but maybe impact in your frontier of knowledge, di ba? I think it's important to have not only real time, as I mentioned, and if not near real time, but perhaps you have to make use of certain resources that may not have been useful to us in the past, but I think will become useful in the near future. Talk about artificial intelligence, I have not heard anyone say something about that, or the interconnection of things and the interconnection of everything, right? And also things that have to do with, looking forward, not based on experience, but based on analysis of forward data, okay? Not backward data. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay. We only have two remaining questions. I think, but before that, I would like to acknowledge first the other members of NAST, our academicians who are present. Probably, if they're not here in the panelists in the Zoom, they're in the attendees
Facebook
of the Zoom. So we have here Academician Maala, Academician Lagmay, Academician Del Barrio, Academician Montoya, corresponding members Serafica, Villarreal, and of course National Scientist Alcala. Before National Scientist Dulik was also here, and Academician Montaño. And if I'm not mistaken, I also saw corresponding member Purunganan in the attendees list. So we have lots of academicians here. And okay, now we go to the last two questions. First with Academician Raymond Tan. Sir?
Well, thank you, Dr. Jomar. First of all, I want to congratulate the five of you. It's always good to see next generation talent year in, year out. And I try to attend this event just to see the future of the Philippines. So let me begin first with a challenge to the five of you. The Philippines, according to the Global Innovation Index, the Philippines ranks 125th out of 131 countries in scientific publications. So my challenge for the five of you, whether you win or get the special citation, is for the remainder of your careers, even as you get caught up in the pursuit of scientific impact and perhaps commercialization of your work, the country needs every publication that you can muster from your careers, because we don't want to be at the bottom of the heap in the global race to create new knowledge. So don't lose sight of what got you here, the publications. Now, let me ask one question, which I think will be level playing field for all of you. Miss Universe type of question. If at some point in the future, let's say you become a DOST, maybe undersecretary or even secretary, and the country decides that we need a multi-decade, multi-generation program to groom Nobel caliber researchers based in the Philippines, what would you just pick one key element that you would put at the top of that program, which you will head and which you will spearhead, which will maximize the odds that within the 21st century, there might be a Philippine-based researcher who is at least in consideration for a Nobel caliber recognition? So maybe in alphabetical order again.
Okay, so I guess I'll start. Thank you, Dr. Raymond, for the challenge and of course this question. I think one thing that I'd prioritize to help us generate really Nobel caliber kind of researchers is knowledge transfer. Like knowledge transfer and collaboration, like of course we understand that other countries have already or already in front of us in terms of their productivity, but somehow if we can establish channels for collaboration so that whatever knowledge they generated could be applied here and we can get a chance to innovate on it, to make it our own, I think that would be very helpful, and that would really accelerate the science education that we have in the country.
Thank you so much, po, sir, for your question. I think it's my turn. So as for me, I think for DOST future, I think we still have to consider innovations. Like, for example, we are in the season of genome editing, and I think these are things or researches that will give us spaces to fast forward our desire to improve our situation. So for me, for DOST programs, I think innovations are still at the top. For us to continue pursuing and also continue forwarding in our pursuit in life, whether research, whether academia, and other professions. And I think that innovations will keep us. I think innovations will provide us the platform. For example, for precision agriculture, genome editing, and everything, we can do several researches, advance in science, even researches in in other planets, like for example. So I think that's one of the factors that we still have to consider that should be available for us.
Okay, for me, so I agree that innovation is one of the top priorities should be for science and technology to improve. So, but not only that, it's advocating the storage of knowledge. So this is through perhaps a good mentorship that I could think of. So because I know that we need to store knowledge through publications. And then that is why for me, research or this innovations of course does not stop if you already have good results. So it is critical for, in my opinion, to publish this results in reputable journals in order to make appropriate dissemination available to the public. So of course, this includes the Philippines.
Hello po, sir. Before I answer the question, I'd like to make a comment muna regarding what you said about publications and the rank of our country. So, like I mentioned, currently we're now part of the Atlas collaboration. So if you Google or if you look at archive and then Control F, search for the name of our country in the February Atlas paper, we're not there. But then if you look at the March papers, we are already there. The Philippines is already there. And Atlas publishes 100 to 150 papers a year. So I hope that could help us. And so regarding your question, sir, medyo bias ako since I'm a physicist. I'd say fundamental driven research. Okay? Yung types of research na, kasi you said, sir, Nobel caliber, di ba? Tingnan nyo yung mga nananalo ng Nobel. The guys who discovered the Higgs, the guys who discovered the gravitational waves and all these things. Curiosity-driven research na hindi lang siya, kasi sir, meron akong anecdote naalala ko. Kasi yung napansin ko kasi sir sa Philippines, sobrang rooted tayo into things now. Of course, there's nothing wrong with applications. Of course, it's very important to use science to help society. But it's also important to do like curiosity-driven research. Yung research na hindi ka blindsided, yung parang kabayo na ito lang nakikita mo. Like meron topic dito na unanswered question, pero since wala siyang application, no, I don't look at that. Meron dito, wala siyang application, no. Dapat ito lang, yung may application lang. And I'd like to share the anecdote I said, sir, kasi when I was applying for DOST, taking my MS Physics in UP Diliman, nag-apply ako ng DOST scholarship, yung interviewer was like, medyo nagdebate kami kasi mine is very theoretical, very abstract, di ba? Physics are like this. And then she was like, yes, but in 1 year, how can that help the Philippines? In 2 years, how can that help? I'm like, no, that's not what physics is all about. Like, curiosity-driven research, yung application niya could be like hundreds of years in the future, just like what Michael Faraday did when he studied electricity. He wasn't thinking, okay, I'll study electricity para next year meron tayong. No, it's not like that. Research doesn't work in that timeline. Yes, may mga research that works in a timeline of 1 year, 2 years. Meron ding mga research, especially physics, that works in spans of like decades, right? So that's why, for example, yung Higgs, yung naka-discover ng Higgs, si Peter Higgs, when he was awarded the Higgs when the Higgs was discovered in 2012, he did that like 1960s, like 50 years ago, right? And then again, when he did that, it was curiosity driven. He was not like, okay, para saan to bukas? Where will I use it? So I hope, in the future, like if I've given the chance, mahammer natin yun ba sa ulo ng mga science educators, ng mga bata na nag-aaral ng science na yes, applying it to society is important. Yes, yung applications is important, but also importante din yung curiosity-driven research, yung parang innate passion mo to solve open mysteries and open questions about the universe. So yun po, sir.
Good afternoon po. Thank you po for the challenge. So actually, para sa akin ay kailangan ay doon tayo pumunta sa root, sa basic study ng science, even sa elementary or high school. Kasi ako ay from National High School. And based sa experience ko ay yung science ay more on memorization. So so yung mga estudyante hindi sila na-encourage mag-research kasi parang yung science ay kita nila as parang something na kailangan nilang lagpasan. So walang motivation sa kanila na parang bakit nila to inaaral, bakit nila to ginagawa. So wala yun. So I think ang kailangan ay mag-train ng dun sa basic level ng mga scientists or educators na sasabi sa mga estudyante na well, science doesn't stop here. Pwede ka pang mag-pursue ng more science through research. And I think kapag ito na nabigay sa basic education, magpa-follow through siya sa college. I mean, even nasa college ako, parang yung concept ng publication ay hindi siya sumasagi sa isip ko. Parang nag-aaral ako kasi, okay, pasa ko itong mga courses. Pero wala, yung research sa akin ay nagpasok lang talaga nung nasa graduate school na ako. I think dapat bata pa lang, simulan na yung pag-promote ng research. Kasi kapag sa buong Pilipinas, yung mga estudyante ay naging, sabi nga ni Dr. Flores, naging curious, magpa-follow na siya. Parang magpupurso na ng study. Tapos I think dapat i-promote din. Although, nag-agree ako na dapat okay yung fundamental. Pero I think, kailangan ma-highlight din yung, lalo na ngayon, yung sa field ko sama, yung stat kunyari. Parang siya, sa data science. Parang kapag nakuha mo yung core, okay siya. So, yung ibang sciences, okay siya. Kasi meron ka ng tools. Pero dapat ay merong interdisciplinary approach na parang hindi porket math lang yan. Parang, okay, nag-solve ka ng equation. Ano yung, para saan yan? Parang dati, no, high school, parang, okay, nag-solve ako ng equation. Hey, na-solve ko yung solution na equation. Pero hindi ko nakikita yung appreciation na parang, para saan itong ginagawa ko. Whereas kapag gagawin yung sort of training na parang geared toward application, I think I encourage ang mga estudyante to pursue research and parang kung magagawa siya across the country. Pero yung mahirap I think doon ay yung mag-train ng mga educator how to be effective educator para ma-promote yung research. Ayun po. Thank you po.
Well, thank you and congrats to all 5 of you again. Thank you, okay. Dr. Jomar.
Okay, thank you, Academician Tan. Now, for the last question, corresponding member Francis de los Reyes, do you have questions for the finalists?
Oh, sure, yeah. Thanks. I know it's getting late, but first, let me add my congratulations to the 5 of you, and I also agree that the future of science and technology in the Philippines looks good. If we just look at the skill sets and the accomplishments that you 5 have. So congratulations again. So very quick question and maybe one sentence answer. And maybe let's do this in reverse alphabetical order. I'll let you guys figure that out. The question is, if you were advising a high school student who is interested in going to STEM, what would your one sentence advice be based on everything that you've learned so far?
One sentence. Okay. Hirap po ng one sentence. Pero sige. Siguro po ay sabihin ko sa estudyante na mathematics is a very beautiful subject and mathematics has been the core of the sciences, the queen of sciences, and studying mathematics will give students the skills to pursue research and in sciences. Thank you.
Hi sir, thank you for that. So sa akin naman, I would ask a question to the student. I would say, ask yourself, okay, kasi you have to assess if gusto mo talaga ng science. Ask yourself this. If malalo ka ng lotto bukas, let's say 5 billion pesos, you have that money, 5 billion pesos, would you still do science with that amount? Would you still be doing science? Like, be honest to yourself. If your answer is yes, go for it. Kasi it means na, deep inside, mahal mo talaga yung science. Kasi most people, minsan, they go to science kasi kasi gagawa tayo ng mga business ganun. But then, if you're not really after that, if you're really after the, yung passion, the contentment that science can give you, then go for it.
Okay, so for me, I may say we live every day with science and technology. So in our everyday life, we should remain curious because every day is a learning process. So it is important to remain curious in what you do. So you'll never stop learning. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Agustin, I think you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. I think I will say to the high school student, simply, there is beauty in science for your future. So I hope that she or he will remain curious and continue to pursue career in science.
For me, I think, especially with the number of advicees that I've been through, really the best tip is to give them a question. No? And my question that I'd like to pose to them is, how will you change the world? Because as Dr. Marvin mentioned, some students just pursue STEM because they think it gives them big bucks or it's where they're good at simply academically. But we should also recognize really that science is part of society, and our role here is not just to do experiments or to write down equations, but to answer something more human. Like, how can we change ourselves? Who are we? So those types of questions I'd like to pose to the students so they really understand where or what role they would like to take in STEM.
Thank you all, and thanks for the chance to ask the question. Thank you. Congratulations again.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. De Reyes. But before we go,
hello?
Yeah, you're raising your
hello?
hand.
That's an interesting question and needs an interesting answer. One-liner, my advice is romance Euclid, period. Romance Euclid, period. What do you think about that, academician?
I enjoy that answer.
It's a question. Your question should be asked of everyone, actually, and should be a thought-provoking for everyone. Not just being a finalist in the in this contest. Thank you,
Chairman Fabella. Can I give my answer?
Go ahead.
I tell my students.
One line.
I'll tell my student, pay attention more to your imagination than facts.
Maybe we can have a seniors contest next year for the admissions.
Let's do that next year.
So my entry,
talent search for not so young scientists.
my entry is already there.
Okay, thank you very much po. Okay, my congratulations to the finalists for making this far. Like National Scientist Pabella has said, you are already winners for having chosen from the pool of nominees we have received this year. The Board of Judges will deliberate after this activity. Then we just have to wait for the official announcement of the result through a formal letter from the NAST president. Now, to formally close this event, let us all welcome the Vice President of NAST Philippines, Academician Fabian M. Dairit.
Good afternoon to everyone. Well, I certainly enjoyed all of the presentations and all of the Q&A. All of your contributions, including those of the judges. Well, certainly I'm going to deliver my closing remarks. On behalf of NAST and the UST, first I would like to congratulate the finalists for a very successful presentation. I think all of you presented really excellently. I commend each of you for showcasing the variety of your contributions and your passion in your science and your research. I'd just like to mention your names again. Dr. Nonowin Agustin, Dr. Rainier Mendoza, Dr. Marvin Flores, Dr. Jude Aberilia, and Dr. Angelo Choi. That was a sequence in which you presented. I believe that NAST has uncovered true talents in science and engineering. May you and all our young scientists continue to be inspired to do more research. On a personal note, I would say that I too was inspired by your passion and your achievements. We at NAST hope to encourage our talented scientists and engineers by recognizing efforts to advance science, technology, and innovation. And we look forward to your continuing successes as well as publications. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our very active judges, led by the chair, National Scientist Raul Pabella, for their diligence and consideration in picking the best talents among the roster of participant aspirants. Our special thanks to DUST for recognizing the significance of having this award. And to our online guests, I appreciate your efforts in finding time, especially including those from overseas, to attend this activity. It has become an international presentation. This event is a success because of your participation. So thank you very much to all again, and let us continue to do research for the advancement of the Philippines and of the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you very much, Academician Dairit. Announcement, Board of Judges and finalists, we are requesting you to stay in the Zoom session, even though it's already lunch here in the Philippines. You need to stay. And in behalf of NAST Philippines, we would like to thank everyone for participating in this event. May it be via Zoom or Facebook Live. It has been my pleasure to serve you as the moderator of this activity. Reminders for those attendees, for your e-certificate of participation, kindly fill out the evaluation form via the link or QR code flashed on your screens. You will also be redirected to the evaluation form upon leaving the Zoom meeting room. We hope you can also join us in other NAST events, and do not forget to follow our NAST social media accounts at NASTPHL. The awarding ceremony will be in the afternoon of July 16, 2021 as part of the NAST 43rd Annual Scientific Meeting to be held on July 12 to 16. Once again, thank you very much for joining us in today's event.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you and congratulations.